Peace, peace. Good dawning, everyone, and welcome to another segment of enlightenment and transformation. All right, we're doing things a little bit different this dawning on our 7 a.m. I think what do I call it? The dawning drive or something like that. But we're gonna get things moving in just a moment. You know, all right. We're gonna start with this in 1 minute, just so I can make sure everybody is where they should be, and then we'll get things popping. We are an African people. We will remember the humanity, glory, and suffering of our ancestors. We will honor the struggles of our elders. We will strive to bring new values and new life to our people. We will have peace and harmony among us. We will be loving, sharing, and creative. We will work, study, and listen so we may learn. Learn so we may teach. We will cultivate self-reliance. We will struggle to resurrect and unify our homeland. We will raise many children for our nation. We will have discipline, patience, devotion, and courage. We will live as models to provide new directions for our people. We will be free and self-determining. We are an African people, and we will win, and we will win, and we will win. Ashe. All right, all right. So we're back, and we're starting, right? And as many of you know, this dawning, that I guess this is our first segment in a long time. In fact, let me get my other recorder going on here just in case. There we go. But this is our first segment in a very long time where I'm not also simultaneously broadcasting on Blog Talk Radio. So I'm going to see how this goes. You know, we're trying out different things and working different methods to see what we come up with. All right. Let me get some of my background. There we go. So I can get my flow going. But yeah, you know, this is the first time in a good while that we have not utilized the Blog Talk Radio component in addition to you know the what's the face the YouTube component. So I'm gonna see how we do with this. All right. So far so good. Just feels a little weird. I guess I got a little hesitation while I'm speaking because I'm used to having both going at the same time and looking at screens back and forth and making sure everything's running. And right now it's a bit simpler, But one of the reasons I also changed the format and just in an attempt to simplify things. Sometimes there's a tendency to overcomplicate what doesn't need to be overcomplicated. So yeah, so the blog talk is out. But in actuality, if I want to, I can actually still take calls, just not for as long as I have been. But yeah, I want to see how this goes for a minute and just see how we do with this. But yeah, as promised yesterday on Chief Speaks, uh, there was a great discussion that I said I would archive inside of the chat room, the live chat that was going on, that I thought was a really good discussion. I couldn't read everything and everything while it was going on, but there was some questions asked that I said that I would address this dawning, you know, with all the family. And let me just say, a caro to everyone. A caro bokbo Olorisha, a caro bokbo Ilez, a caro egbe anu, So good dawning to all the homes, good dawning to all the adherents of the spiritual forces and the divine forces that evolve and manage the cosmos. And just good dawning to all of those who are here to support the work, who are identifying with the community. Good dawning to you all. And of course, a special djembe riff or drum riff to the Florida leg of Anu. And I'm so happy that they got together and fellowshipped. That's what this thing is about, man. And sat down and broke bread together. I know that park that they were in. I'm pretty sure because when last time I linked up with I think it was Maria and Michelle and Richard and the fam and everybody, it was at that same park, and the same thing happened. Couldn't find them. They were on one entrance, I was on another. But yeah, special djembe riff to them, man, for linking up, man, and taking it beyond the virtual, man. Those are the experiences that you never forget, and it gives you a really healthy context later when you're communicating online and things like that, man. So that was a great thing. But yeah, like I said, it was a great conversation. In my opinion, it was probably one of the better conversations, I think, in a chat that was happening yesterday. And Brother Byron, if any of you got to check out yesterday's segment, took it from the chat room, and he called in, as well as brother Antonio as well, and they called in and shared their piece, on the things that were being spoken about. And I haven't read through all of it, so I have it up in front of me. I'm going to reference it, but there was a couple little points that I was just looking at, and I said, I definitely will kind of chime in on some of this, because right before the show went off, there was some questions asked in the chat, but we were done at that point. But essentially, a lot of the discussion in that space revolved around roles. Who does what in a family, and especially as it pertained to finances. There was some some opinions or some knowledge being put forth, and I thought it was a pretty good discussion because of the fact that, one, the sisters were sharing their perspective, the brothers were sharing their perspective, and it was an intelligent discourse. And on top of that, it was a respectful discourse. So, when it's respectful and there's some critical thinking being utilized, then it's always going to get good, even if people don't agree, which is fine, but if it's respectful, then at least people will seek to comprehend where each other is coming from, but there were some things said that were off, but like I said, a lot of times I hear off things, and it's not always my desire to come in and say, wait a minute, stop, don't think that way, don't think this way, you're thinking the wrong way. It's not about that. Everyone has to go through their process in that sense, but I'll start by saying this: when you're dealing with familial structure, it varies depending on your cultural group, depending on your ethnic group. So there's no absolutes in that sense. However, just because there's no absolutes doesn't mean that you can't actually do something that could be fatal to the growth and the cultivation of not only your family, but your holistic health. And some of the things that I saw mentioned in that chat were actually fatal to the growth of a family. And the beauty is that, again, because it was a respectful discourse for the most part. I mean, there was some little things thrown in there, but that's wasn't major, but because it was a respectful discourse for the most part, people got to really put their cards on the table. But sometimes we tend to forget that there are some people who are further along than we are, and it's great to share what you're feeling, but definitely be open to the possibility of being corrected. You know, look for correction. You know, look for refinement, look for enhancement, because whatever you're thinking now can be thought better. Whatever you're feeling now can be felt better. Whatever you're doing now can be done better. You know, always keep that in your mind, because you are a perfecting work. You're not perfected, but you're perfecting. So there's always should be an opportunity for refinement. All right. So, you know, I would just say that in that sense, in terms of, you know, what was shared in that environment in the chat, you know. And before I get into that, let me say peace. I haven't done this in a while. Peace, Brother Anthony. Peace, Brother Anwar. Definitely peace, Sister Georgina, you know, from the Netherlands. It's 1301, so I guess it's 101 over there. Peace, I am rising, Brother Keith, Sister Maria, Sister Nicole, Jennifer, Vivid Eye Publications, Sister Marva, Brother Joel, Bamboo, and Brother Haru, and Sister Ma'at. You know, good dawning to you all. Good dawnings and greetings to you all. And of course, those of you who are you know, lumbering in. Like I always say, it seems like the show doesn't really start for most people until that 20-minute mark, because usually around the 20-minute mark is when everything fills up, at least Blog Talk side, you know, YouTube side. Peace, Sister Nikki Love, you know, great dawning. So yeah, man. So like I said, great conversation though, nonetheless. And I'm giggling. I just saw a quote from Brother Lowe, who called in recently, you know, gave a great contribution, man. We got to do some, you know, some traveling and talking about different movies and shows and the relevancy to the thoughts that were on. But he said in the chat, everybody wants to live in a land of make-believe. Yeah, there was some of that happening. Definitely with some of the things being mentioned and whatnot. But, you know, like I said, you never really want to take a hard line, you know, when you know we don't really have the luxury to just, you know, come up and passively take certain opinions or certain thoughts and then own them and then take a hard line on what we've passively accepted, knowing that we live within a society where social engineering is the norm of every day. Something is always trying to be engineered around a particular political agenda, you know. So to say, well, I grew up like this, or this is what I've always seen, or this is what I think, this is what I feel, you got to be careful with that. And there was some of that going on. And it was beautiful that Brother Byron was able to bring some cultural context to what was actually being said. You know, he was able to say, well, listen, if you go to West Africa, you go to Nigeria, you go back home, this is how things are performed. Now, again, I will reiterate that there are many different ways to do things, you know, so it's not to say that Nigeria is the gold standard, and not that he even put it out there in that way, you know, peace, Akia, you know, and, you know, he didn't necessarily put it out that way, but I think it is very important to get that cultural and ethnic context, especially if those are systems that you're spending a large amount of your spiritual scholarship studying, you know. So there was some things said here, and one, I'll just kind of pick through them, you know, a little bit, and then I'm going to get to the question that was put at the end. Sister Diana, that was put at the end of the chat that I don't think we really even got to because the show was going off. But essentially, like I said, there was some talk around finances, right? So let's just start there. Finances. One of the problems is that there was a mixing, you know, again, when you're talking, especially for you newbies, because you know, just by some of the things that were said or the questions, I could tell who was new and who wasn't new. You know, you got to be able to qualify your statements and your questions. So within that group, Peace, Sister Malika, there was this intertwining or intermingling of the words finances and economy, you see, almost as if they were synonymous terms. And some people do think they are synonymous terms, so they use them together without realizing that in doing that, you're creating a confused statement. If you're speaking about money or you're speaking about economy, which deals more with relationships within a homestead, economy technically may not and doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with money. It's something different. When you're dealing with economy, you look at the term eco. I've shared this before, but I'll do it again. and in the 14 keys, I go into this more. I break this down more. Because I go into the concept of cooperative economics and the 14 keys. So then I do more breakdowns on this. But I just from a cursory perspective, eco is life, as many of you know, like ecology, right? Study of life. And nomos or namo means to manage. It also means the home, and it also means knowledge. Nomos, knowledge. So economy is the knowledge of life, or the knowledge of things that keep life sustained, of course. Economy is also the life of the home, right? And economy is also the management of life, right? So if you notice, whether we're dealing with economos or economy, right? And we're dealing with the knowledge of life, or the management of life, or the management of the home, or the life of the home. Not one of those terms is anything to do, or those concepts, with money, with currency, with banknotes. Okay, so it's good to, like I said, to really have that understanding of the terms, as you're speaking, so that way you can make a more coherent and really impactful statement, when you're speaking. So I definitely can see that may have caused a little bit of confusion, and there wasn't a whole lot of confusion in the group, but I don't think people realized that they were talking about two different things. They were talking about two different things. Like Brother Byron was speaking more about economy. Well, this is the way we do things in the culture, right? So he's dealing more with the relationships that sustain the life of the culture, that sustain the life of the home. This is how the man deals with the woman. This is how the woman deals with the children, so forth and so on. And then other people were talking about jobs. Well, women can make money just like men can make money. So therefore, there has to be balance. Now that's code word for, and mainly was a newbie saying that, and it was code word for, if I make the same amount that you do, or I make money too, then why do you get to be in a different position than I do? Because balance, people were using that as a way to say it should be unisexual assignments within the home. Okay. Again, the more you do this and the longer you stay in this, the more you learn to read the codes, and a lot of you newbies, you may not understand that a lot of times your discourse is identical. You don't realize it, and that's how you can usually tell there's an issue. It's just like if you speak to someone, you could go all around the world and speak to someone who may be committed to a certain practice, right? And maybe they don't outwardly confess that they're committed to that practice. But as soon as you start speaking about something that's alternative in their minds, they all give you the same exact response, right? So to let you know, oh, okay, they came under the same school, or perhaps the same modality of programming, right? So a lot of newbies, you won't know that until you get further into this. And newbies, when are you new to this culture? When are you considered new? Well, in my summation, anything under 4 to 5 years, you're still very, very new in this. And 4 to 5 years doesn't even mean that you're grounded and you're matured in this consciousness. 4 to 5 years, you're still very new to it. All right, but you should have some of the baseline ideas down at least by 4 to 5 years. Some of the baseline things. At least by 4 to 5 years in, you probably know the difference between organic food and non-organic food. You know, 4 to 5 years, you may have been introduced to some of the fallacies and misgivings of some of the larger and more structured, organized religions. You know, just some of the, and that's just some of the basics, some of the very basics. And you'd be surprised, you know, there have been many people who have built careers around regurgitating the very basics. You know, the schools don't have your children's best interests at heart. You know, these are the basics, right? So 4 to 5 years, you're still very young in this. You're still very new to it. You know, a lot of times you usually don't even start to get your groove until at least about 10 years in, to be honest. You know, to that point, you know, where you heard me speak about that your mind begins to take shape and take form of the actual information. So you're not necessarily still looking up everything, but you start to get to a point where your world perception and your worldview begins to align itself with the higher idea, you know, philosophies and doctrines that you've been studying. That usually takes about 10 years. So I've heard a lot of people who've got 2-3 years in who are now writing their first books or lecturing. You know, again, we live in a society where it's lawless, man. This is the Wild West. So, you know, people do whatever they feel like doing, and that's just what it is, you know. So, you know, getting to some of the like I said, some of the comments, man, you know, a lot of discussion revolved around finances. And one of the things that I think that sparked it, I think I'd have to go through it line by line, but was that there was this idea, and I've spoken about this before, that if a woman goes out to work for someone else, essentially she's supporting another man's mission, which could be problematic. And then there was a response that, you know, well, yeah, here we go. Oh, wow, look at this right in front of me. So Sequoia says it is important that the woman is not working for another man's business. She should be working for and in her man's best interest. Okay. And cool enough, I'm seeing here in this chat, Sequoia's husband was also on the chat. So they were both sharing together, you know, in there, which is always great. They made it a family affair. And Loves Good, that's her username, or his, I don't know if it's male or female, said, Sequoia working for another organization can also be in the man's / family interest. Is it the action or the mindset that is important? See, that was one, I think that was a comment I saw that made me say, okay, good. Now, you know, this is good. You know, this is good. This is good. You know, that they're talking. So with that idea, is it the action or the mindset that's important? The mindset, because the mindset dictates the actions. You know, now you also have to understand how your actions can affect your work and your progress. I would have to say Sequoia was absolutely right on this one, you know, and I know we can chop it up to, well, that's just your opinion. It's a matter of opinion. This isn't a matter of opinion. Again, this is a matter of knowing, of studying, understanding how systems work, you know. So again, if you understand, whether it be from an indigenous perspective, or if you get that understanding from a larger global financial or even economic perspective, you understand that why businesses are structured in a certain way, and why immediately the thought is, if you go out to work for another organization, you're working for another man. Notice that, you know, no one disputed that in the chat. No one said that, no, what if the organization is ran by a woman, or it's in a woman's interest? We clearly know who runs organizations, who runs larger organizations, and whose interests and whose dreams or ideas and visions that we're fueling when we're working. It's clear, because organizations are basically structured around polygynous design. You know, you'll have a man at the top. You may have other chiefs in that environment, and then you have a lot of financial concubines, secretaries, receptionists, sales force, you know, IT people, accountants, marketing, so forth and so on. All right. So again, it's just a thing of understanding, and it's difficult because it breaks a lot of rules and ideas of the current paradigm. So of course, people are going to be like, I'm not feeling that, you know. But again, think about where you got some of these ideas. You know, think about where you got even some of these ideas of women extending beyond the homestead and working for someone else's homestead. You know, was that something that came as a matter of intelligent, critical thinking choice, or were they kind of put into that position, or was it marketed to them in a way that was duplicitous? Think about even in some senses when we started seeing a very rapid deterioration of the family structure, you know, and what that came at the helm of, you know. So again, coming into this way and coming into this thinking and this knowing, it's going to challenge some of your time held notions, especially if some of those time held notions you may have kind of rooted and traced to a certain way of thinking. So now it may challenge your whole paradigm of thought, your entire perception of how you perceive men and how you perceive women and how you perceive family, how you perceive community, economy, money, so forth and so on. I know one of the comments that was said by Thunderous Prophet, I don't know if I have it right in front of me, but I'll paraphrase. She said something I like. She said something that was a little funny, kind of, in a way. Not funny as in humorous, but then she said something that I also liked. She said, first Thunderous Prophet said, funny that the man is placed, quote unquote, above the woman. Studies/science shows that the oldest human bones are female, not male. Just saying. And the only to this realm is the female. I don't know what that means. And the only to this realm is the female. I'm assuming that was a typo. Let's see. What was she maybe trying to say? And the only to this realm is the female. I don't know. But anyway, we'll deal with the part that I could comprehend. So she said it's kind of funny that the man is placed, quote unquote, above the woman. Studies/science shows that the oldest human bones are female, not male. Just saying. Well, there's a lot there. Again, this is where you know, okay, you know, it's okay. You know, you're learning. So sometimes through the things that we say, it reveals what, you know, what we're still learning, or maybe some of the information that we've not cracked open as of yet. And that's okay, because the more we learn, the more we realize how much more we have to learn, you know. So I don't, well, I know no one in the chat said that the man is placed above the woman. You know, even when we talk about above and below, like as above, so below, you know, one of the things that I've always told you guys is sometimes try to replace the word higher with inner. You know, they're just perspectives, and they're put upon visually a linear plane, whether it be higher, lower, left, or right, just for your understanding. But even with that, okay, let's just say if that is the case, the man is above the woman, and he is in a sense because he's covering that woman. So we could look at it in that sense. But is he covering that woman by, you know, subduing her? No, not necessarily. It doesn't work that way, you know. So I don't think that was actually said. But again, that becomes the perception a lot of times because of the societal programming. When we start having conversations like this, like, oh, well, the man, as soon as we use the words like control, you know, direct, lead, those are trigger words for certain programming to now, you know, come forth. Studies/science shows that the oldest human bones are female, not male. Who studies? Who science? Let's start there. Number one. Number two, even if that were, well, again, that pretty much smashes that. But even still, we want to go further. Study/science shows, yeah, studies/science, depending on who studies and who science, will show you what they want to show you for the points of political and mental manipulation. So just because something is shown doesn't mean that that's what it is. So it shows that the oldest human bones are female, not male. And what does that have to do with the man having a certain responsibility to cover? It has absolutely nothing to do with that at all. So does that mean now the woman is above? Because Western science and Western studies have found or have shared with you that they found some old bones somewhere. The two don't add up. This is when you kind of have to learn to qualify your statements sometimes. Even when you say studies in science, who study? You know, isn't that what we're trying to do? You know, when we're coming into our consciousness, we're learning to dissect and look at, and a lot of the studies that have been given to us, we're learning, you know, studies in science have also said that humans have a lot of the same DNA as the pig. We're very closely related to the pig. That's why when they started doing a lot of skin grafting and organ generation, they use pigs for that, for organ transplants and skin grafting. I've not seen a pig yet that has skin like mine. You see, so sometimes it's good to qualify that when you say studies in science. You know, studies in science have also taught years ago that me and my people, we were designed for subservience. You know, genetically, you know, we were born for subservience. We had an inkling towards subservience. Then we were told that we had a natural inkling towards violence. You know, but again, you know, just I don't want to harp on that one too much because I think I got on another post. So I don't want her to feel like she's being picked on. But um, again, sometimes you want to be able to qualify what it is that you're saying, and even if the idea that the man is placed above the woman, again, no one said that, so I don't even want to harp on that. You know, again, that's just something that comes out sometimes. But again, just because science and studies show you something doesn't mean that's what it is, right? So you want to kind of be able to move beyond that a little bit. You know, we can't mix the two together. You know, we can't come in here and say, well, listen, I was raised this way. I was raised to believe this and this and that, and then try to mix that with your indigenous study. It's not going to work. I'm telling you, it's not going to work. You know, or to say like, well, in America, these are the laws of the land. So, you know, based on us living in America or living in the Anglosphere, this is the space that we have left to practice our traditions. You know, you have to dig into this stuff, and you have to be these traditions and these ideas, you know, despite, irregardless of where you're at socially. See, that's the whole point. When we talk about being liberated or we talk about being free, it's not a reaction to colonialization. We're free and we're liberated, and we choose to be indigenous, whatever that means for you. Whether you say, you know what, I'm going to get back to my roots as a Peruvian, or I'm going to get back to my roots, you know, as a native. You know, maybe my people, I come from the Choctaw people, you know, so I'm going to get back to that root, or get back to my roots as an Ethiopian, or whatever it is that you see and hold as your indigenous foothold. You're doing that despite what's going on, not as a reaction to. When you do it from a reactionary standpoint, then you're always going to use whatever provoked that reaction. That's going to be your standard that you're going to work against. So you'll find that even, you know, as you're studying, for many people, they'll spend 10 to 15 years studying to disprove the Quran or to disprove the Bible, because their studying and their scholarship is a reaction to that. You see, those are the type of people who get businesses by accident. You know, they work a job, they can't stand their boss. You know, they wish they could come and go as they please. And they say, you know what, I could do this myself. I could start my own business. I'm sick of being here. And then the business fails within the first year and a half, because it was a reaction to something as opposed to this is what's in me and I have a drive for this irregardless of what's going on around me. It's not emotionally motivated. So you just kind of have to be a little careful sometimes. And I know it's very difficult because it takes a long time to pick out and pull out all of the programming and the triggers. Sometimes it takes a while to see what's you and what's them. And to be able to separate the two within your own psyche, because sometimes their voice is so loud you start thinking it's your voice, until somebody asks you certain questions and you realize you're not making any sense because they never give you the full picture of anything. So when some critical thinking comes into place, and you're speaking from the theism, or when the they, I'm speaking about your mental overlords, when critical thinking comes into place, their information can never be resolved fully. So that's why they always give you a scapegoat of belief. So you can always say, well, this is just what I believe. You could believe what you believe, but this is what I believe. It'll always be something like that. And that's the same thing as a religious response of, well, you know what? You got to have faith. Everything's not going to be revealed to you. You're just going to have faith. It's the same exact cop-out. All the cop-outs are the same. And that's when you realize, oh, Overlord's active right on that one. There's the Overlord. So, but she said something that I liked, like right below it, if I can find it. It was about money. Oh, she said, finance isn't hard. Money is just numbers. I thought that was real cool. And she didn't get a lot of traction there with that one. I don't think people really pulled on that, but she, that was a good point that she said. When you're able to see it as that, sometimes we make it much bigger than what it is, and in that sense. But again, like I said, a lot of discussion circled around who does what. And again, if the woman, how does the woman get the money, and if she does get the money, shouldn't it be quote unquote balanced, which, like I said, that's code word for unisexual homestead equability, where, if I'm making money and you're making money, then what gives you any different type of position different than my position? And again, that's familial suicide. That's what we've been doing all this time. It doesn't work. If you kind of just notice and pay attention, that does not work. Hard conversation to have, man, but a hard statement to say. This is the parts where people don't like. But, like I said, I don't say what I say for reaction. And I don't say what I say as a reaction to. Sometimes I teach as a reaction to. So if somebody said, like right now, I'm being reactionary. I'm looking at what was, I copy and pasted what was written in that chat, and I'm responding. I'm reacting to some of the things that were said and some of the sentiment that was shared. But overall, the overall mission is not a reaction to the unknowingness of individuals. Either way, I still have to teach. I'm still going to teach, but I'm just looking through it. She said, okay, Love Good said, I do think the conflict can be resolved, but with honesty and open conversation and respect for the male and female role. Absolutely. She said, conflicts can be resolved, or do we accept the position? Right. Sometimes the conflict there is, give me 1 second, everyone. My browser and everything just crashed. Always something, right? Okay. Well, hopefully I'm back. I had a little crash situation just now with my browser. So all right. But yeah, like I said, so yeah, the acceptance of the role or critically looking at the roles. That's just said it was a great conversation, man, because even the newbies who came in, and no one identified themselves as newbies. I'm saying newbies, just to make it clear. I know who's new. I can tell who's new. Okay, thank you, Sister Diana. I can tell who's new to it and who had a little bit more seasoning in their perspective. But I thought it was great, man, because you know, it's always good when people put what they're feeling or what they're thinking and put it on the table and allow it to be dissected if need be. You're in a safe place, man. Nobody trying to embarrass anyone, and if you do, I'm gonna kick you out because we don't do that here. At the end of the day, and like I've said so many times, man, everybody is here learning. Everybody, nobody has this thing completely, and if I can sit and listen to you. This may sound arrogant, but you're going to hear it. If I can sit and listen to you, you can definitely listen to each other and respect each other. If I can listen to you and honor your perspective, you can definitely listen to each other and honor one another's perspective, because I could put the smash down on all of you mentally, knowledge wise, wisdom wise. All right. So if I can have enough patience and enough compassion and empathy to listen and share and build with you, then do not think yourselves so much higher, so much greater than one another. And that has happened before among students, and I have had to put people to the side and talk to them. Say, man, don't do that, man. What's wrong with you? What do you think you know? And then sometimes that's when I'll tell them what I have observed in them. And they say, oh, I didn't know I was acting like, yeah, don't do that. So yesterday's dialogue was great because it was none of that action. It was just it was, a little tense moments here and there, but, some honest sharing. Now, Brother Antonio has said the thunderous prophet, I guess in her response to finances in our heart is just numbers, which again, great perspective, man. And really a great feminine perspective. That's that lightness that you want. That was awesome statement. She said, or he said, I'm sorry, Brother Antonio said, it's not hard, but how are you using these finances? Are they being used to fulfill the family mission statement? Well, and then she said, that is for each unit to decide. And I guess she means by unit, each family unit. I hope she means by each family unit, which is absolutely correct. The man is not going to decide how to use the finances down to the very penny, even though he's the director. The key is that she's supposed to, like I always say, it's the men, heterosexual men, who build civilizations, and then heterosexual females absorb themselves into those civilizations. Really, everybody absorbs himself into the civilizations that have been built. And if you just sit back and think about that, man, you'll realize that even within a family constitutes a civilization. And like I've said so many times, brothers, take your time in building your empire. You find if you take your time in building your empire, you're not going to be doing all that arguing, and it's not going to be all that conflict, because your structure is already going to be very clear from the beginning. And especially as women get a little bit older, they really, really value structure, because when they get a little bit older, and when I'm saying a little bit older, late 20s, late 20s to well, let's just say late 20s. They may have been in a couple of relationships already where there was no structure and there was no goals. So now they see the difference. Or maybe they were in a relationship where they were allowed to lead and they crashed and burned and realized that's not my spot. I need to come into a situation where a civilization / structure has been created, and I'm told where we're going and what we're doing and what I need to do to keep this thing going. You see, the decisions, or maybe even some of the hard choices, or the clearing of the land has already been done. So now when she gets in that space, she can do what she does. She can blossom in that space and do what she does. So yeah, it is dependent. Like I said, each family unit is different. There's no absolute law on who does what. In some family units, the woman may not work at all. She may just take care of the homestead. And taking care of the homestead means different things for different people. you know um like, for instance, I'm not necessarily I don't need a woman who's going to be scrubbing floors every day unless she just likes cleaning the sky. I mean, I've had sisters like that. That was their therapy. Whenever they were thinking, they would clean. I always knew when they were cleaning, they had a lot on their mind. But I'm fine with hiring people to clean. I'm fine with hiring people to cook, but I'm not going to manage them. You know, um, I'm not going to tell them what to make for me every night. Make me this. No, you do that. You manage the homestead. You manage the life of the home. You manage the economy. You see. So now that's me. Now, does that mean that's the absolute rule? Need not be. But sometimes I know from a religious perspective, we need absolute rules just to get our legs strong again. So we can, that's the structure that we talk about. So once we have that structure, then we can say, okay, cool. Now I know where to go from here. But, sometimes, and again, a lot of that comes from your Western programming. We have this idea that the men are going to go out and work every day and the women are going to stay home and vacuum every day. That came from watching old black and white movies. And I'm not saying that something's wrong with that structure if that's what works for your family and works for the advancement of your community, because your family is not an enigma. It should exist within the community. So whatever you establish should be not only healthy for each individual member of the family, healthy for the family, but it also should be healthy for the community. You see, and depending on the nature and the character of your family, because each family has a different character. You see, so it's different, and you have to respect that. We're not all going to do the same thing. We're not. The royal families are not going to do the same thing as those who are not born into royalty. Just like a blue collar family is not going to do the same as a white collar family. Okay, and it doesn't mean that anyone is better or lesser than the other. We just do different things. Like I said, I don't need women who, and if you want to cook and clean, cool. But I'm not, I'm not really so pressed for that. Know how to cook and clean, be clean, have culinary skills, but have those things not just so that if you need to do them, you could do them, but also so that you can manage those properly who may be hired to do those things. You see, just like I know how to work on cars, I know do contracting work and things like that. I'm good with my hands, basically. Anything that can be built or fixed or repaired, I can do it. Right. But because of the work I do, because of the spiritual work, the community work, the social work, the political work, I don't have the time like I used to when I was younger to spend the strong end up underneath the car, dropping an engine and doing. I don't have time like that anymore. Nor do I even have the desire. It's just not that enjoyable for me anymore, man. To be digging out grease underneath my fingernails and stuff, or all Sunday night, or even working on plumbing and electrical. I just don't enjoy it like I used to because my time is so occupied with other things. However, if I hire people to do those things, I can properly manage them in that work because I know the work. You see, so depending on what it is that you want for your family and what you want your family to represent will determine the roles. In that sense, if I spend 3 or 4 days working on a project on a home that I may own, or working on a car or something like that, that's 3 or 4 days that I may take away from the more important work that I owe to the community. You see, now if I live a pretty simple life and I don't owe too much to the community or need to do too much for the community, then yeah, I can take 10 days and do a home project, or 10 days and say, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to totally renovate the kitchen and this, that's fine. And again, it doesn't mean that a person is lesser or greater because they have more time or less time. It doesn't mean that, or because they say, well, I want a woman who can cook and clean and keep my house clean or whatever like that. We all have different things that we're here to do. So again, like Sister Thunderous Prophet said, it depends on each family unit. But again, making money is not the standard for what the roles are supposed to be. Please don't get that twisted. You know, if your woman makes, you know, let's say $600,000 a year, and you make $250,000 a year, it doesn't mean that she's the boss. You know, it doesn't mean that she doesn't have to make you a sandwich and provide nourishment. I said sandwich too. I don't know if you heard that, but it doesn't mean that she doesn't have to still provide nourishment, or at the very least manage the provisions of nourishment. You know, chances are, if you're making $250,000 a year and your woman's making $600,000 a year, you may have lifestyles where, you know, your home, or your physical home I'm speaking about, may not be the supreme priority in your lives. Maybe building something else or your children, the rearing of your children, may be the actual supreme priority. And you may have a team who take care of your home and take care of your children. You may have a nanny, you may have babysitters, you may have chefs, you may have housekeepers. You know, there may be 4 or 5 people on that homestead's team in order for you to continue making $250,000 and her to continue making $600,000 a year. You see, and if you say, well, listen, but I just want you to cook and clean, that may not be totally sensible as a man, because maybe you have only that model in your mind. You know, when I come home, the place is supposed to smell like chicken. You know, and whenever she hugs me, she's supposed to smell like cookies. You know, like, that may not be necessary. You know, it may not be sensible based on what you decide you want to represent for your actual community. So that's some of the things that you have to sit back and consider. And honestly, that's the man's job. That's men's work. You know, as you're building your empire, you decide what your empire is going to be. Now, your empire honestly could be, you may have a little storefront store where you repair vacuums or something, you know, or where you repair shoes, you know, and you may make $50,000 a year. You may make $40,000 a year. It doesn't mean that you don't have an empire just because you haven't cracked the $100,000 mark. It's all in the mentality. And a lot of times it has to do with polyrhythmic activity. You know, it's not just about, you know, I'm making a lot of money now that I have an empire, because there's a difference between building riches and building wealth, you know, or being a high earner and one who has high wealth potential. You know, do you have assets in place? Do you have passive income? You know, do you have a safe place to stay? Do you have reliable transportation? When that woman comes, is she able to absorb into something that you have? Or is she going to say, well, listen, I'm already absorbed into this other man's mission over here. I work over here, and, you know, what you're doing is not compatible with my skill set. You know, so you want to think about that. And a woman is going to choose you based on her ability to absorb, because the woman chooses. All right. I mean, I can't say that but so many times. The woman chooses. You ain't choosing nothing. I don't care if you even chase her down. She still chooses. She's the sexual gatekeeper. So she chooses you. And one of the things that a wise woman should be looking at in choice selection is, again, what am I absorbing into? Let's say if you meet a guy and well, he just has nothing. You know, he has nothing. He has nothing for you to get behind. He has nothing for you to support. He has nothing for you to cultivate and build. You know, that's just not a wise selection. I don't even have to go deep into that one. And the reason I don't need to go deep, because I see so many of you do it so often. And I don't think anyone ever told you that simple truth. He's not the one you should be trying to get with. But just understand this. And I had put this quote up on my Instagram yesterday, you know, and I'll paraphrase. And it's just saying that a mentally mature man is not going to allow you to speak to him in a condescending way. When you do that, he's not going to argue with you. He's just going to leave you for a woman who is mentally mature and can show him the proper respect. I had to deal with this a couple days ago with somebody. thinking that they could speak to me any old way, without discretion, any old way they felt like. And I had to explain to them, like, I can clearly tell that you've been around beta males all your life. You don't know how to speak to me, but you're not allowed to do that. So when I said you're not allowed, they were like, allowed? I said, yes, you're not allowed. Says who? Says me, because I'm the one who runs this. This is my kingdom. And in my kingdom, I set the rules. You can't speak to me however you want to speak to me. I don't speak to you or anyone else, without discretion. So you can't come in here and try to create your own rules. And all that person did, they sat and they listened, and they were like, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're right. I didn't realize where you were at with it. Sorry about that. You see, because the structure has been created. Now, when you haven't set your structure, you can't confidently say you're not allowed to do that. That's against the rules, my rules. And then, of course, you'll get those that'll say, well, we should make the rules together because no. No, we ain't making nothing together. You can make rules for children based on the precepts that I give you, but you're not making rules for me. All right, that's not how it works. So, again, when you build your structure ahead of time and not just on paper, it's not just about reading some books and then creating a spreadsheet and a schedule, And like I said, your empire may not be a multi-million-dollar empire. That's fine. You may have a little store or something you're doing, or you could be selling incense or clothes or whatever. You may only be making $35,000-$40,000 a year. So let's say if you're making $35,000-$40,000 a year, and again, this idea came up in the chat. I wish I could pull it up real quick, but the concept of the man should be able to support the woman, right? Well, often we say that. Well, I don't say that, but often that is said. But what does it mean to support the woman? And then, of course, we, some of the things that came up in the chat, maybe I could pull them up, but it was like, basically, he should take care of all of the familial essentials. I'm just scanning as I'm speaking, but it was basically, people were saying that, he should pay the rent or the home, the mortgage or whatever, take care of all the major essentials in the home. And then the money that she earns could be used for discretionary uses, like small things, but she shouldn't be required. She shouldn't be required, but she could, but she shouldn't be required to infuse that back into the family financial pool. Okay, that's one way, right? That's one way to operate, if that works for you. Is that the absolute? No. That's one way. Again, if you have a brother who's got like I said, maybe he's got a little small business, he might be selling phones, they got a little phone repair shop or something, and he's making $35,000-$40,000 a year. It's his empire. And I know brothers like that who are noble, who they may not make a lot of money, but they have their structure and their empire built, and they're cool with what they're doing. They're free in that. Again, that's why I go back to like I said, Sister Thunder's prophet has said, it's just numbers. It's true. It's just numbers. So if he's making $35,000 a year and the next guy is making $350,000 a year, it doesn't necessarily mean the guy making $350,000 a year has a bigger empire. He may be able to purchase shinier things. He may live in a better house and drive a better car, but it doesn't mean that he actually has an empire, because he may have high earning potential, but he may still have no actual familial or personal wealth, nor he might not even have an economy. He's just a high earner. Whereas the guy making $35,000-$40,000 a year, I'll give you an example, real easy. You go back home, right? And when I say home, to the continent, you want to buy some land. Got to go speak to the elders and speak to the chief, right? You might go to a certain place that has the most beautiful land you've ever seen. It could be a waterfall on the property. Gorgeous. Looks like paradise, right? You go talk to a chief or to elders, but let's just say the chief, we'll make it simple, to get permission to give him money for this land. And this may be an individual, and we'll break it down in US dollars. You UK people, y'all can do your own breakdowns, but this may be an individual who earns $7,000 or $8,000 a year or less. Matter of fact, I'm gonna give you some real numbers real quick. Let me think. Give me half a second. Okay. I gotta do the conversions in my head real quick. 2 times 12 months. Yeah, $3,000 a year. $4,000 a year. US dollars. But you can't get that land unless you establish a relationship with that man. Now, you may come and you say, well, listen, I see some plots that I want. I want 4 or 5 plots over there, on the side of the waterfall, right? And he's not dumb. He knows, foreigner coming over, sees this beautiful land. He may say, okay, no problem. Give me 30,000 US per plot, right? $120,000. But to a local who wants the plots by the waterfall, let me do the conversion real quick. He may sell it to him for about maybe $30 to $40 per plot. I'm not exaggerating these numbers. I'm really not. Now, the reason why the price is different is because the local has a relationship with the chief. He might be related to the chief. You see? Now, the chief has built his economy. Economy deals with relationships, not money. You see? He's built his empire, of course, because he's a chief, or he's a part of a dynasty, a part of an empire. He's chief. You see? Now, you come in with all your money and you still can't do what he can do easily and quickly. You see? He's protected. He's well fed. He has land. He has ways to earn riches very quickly by selling the land, but it's not even about that for him. Because this is how it also works back home. As many of you know, you buy those 4 plots by the waterfall for $120,000. You don't fence it in. You don't clear the land. You don't build a structure on the land. Within 10 years, they're taking that land back from you. $120,000 loss. Now, if you get a cool chief, and this is cool, even though your land still got taken, they'll give you land somewhere else. They'll say, oh, well, so came, they wanted that land, so we sold it to them. But don't worry, we gave you something else. And you saying, but wait, is it by the waterfall? No, it's not by the waterfall. You lost that. Why? Because you didn't come. The first thing they'll say is, we didn't see you. You didn't come here. We didn't see you. So you see, the relationship is more important than your money. See, that's empire building. I can go to the continent right now with $5 in my pocket. I'm good. I'm going to be fed. I'm going to be housed. I'm going to have a crew of young people around me to make sure nobody messes with Baba. I'm all right because I've established those relationships. So it's not so much about the finances per se. Men. So when I speak about, men take a little longer to get married sometimes, man. You can get married, start your family at 50, but 40, 45, 50, hold up, build your empire. I'm not just saying get your money. It's much wider and bigger than that. Get your money, determine what your culture is going to be, establish your doctrine and your rules of that culture, and learn the things that will sustain the culture, learn the things that will bring harm to the culture, and establish powerful relationships. You see? Just like now, many of you, and matter of fact, I've already done this. I did this recently. Some of you know, I'm not going to, but one of my youth wants to get into the acting field. And I know some of the ANU people, they actually are in the acting field. So guess what I did? I sent out the emails and said, hey, could you guys have a conversation with my youth? They want to get into this field. Oh, no problem. I got you, Chief. For you, it's not an issue. You see? That's economy. Was any money exchanged? Nope. But the relationship is there. That's a part of building an empire. So now my youth, they inherit the empire. They inherit the value and the quality of the relationships. You see, I put up a little video, was it yesterday, day before yesterday? Finally, right? Finally showed one of my youth, because he kept asking me, when you gonna give me a shout out? I said, all right. So I put up a little video. This is only like 10 seconds, if that, of one of my youth, boxing and stuff. And then he looked and he was like, Baba, the video got like 200 something views. So yeah. And look, people said nice things about you too. You see that? Look at that. That's what this is about. And his heart is like, it just touched his heart. People were like, yeah, young warrior, keep it up, proud of that really touched him. Now, how much would I have paid for that feeling that he got? I couldn't even put a price tag on it. But I didn't have to pay for it because my empire has been built and I have relationships. You see, just like when Brother Byron was going through it when his Baba transitioned. You see, because of the relationships, we all went into action. Some of you have never even seen Brother Byron physically. You see, but his Baba, I guess it was a reverse inheritance. His Baba inherited, the relationships that he shared as a part of building his empire. Just like his children, I deal with his youth because of the relationship he and I have. You see, so again, like I said, we don't want to confuse the value of building the economy and make it synonymous with finances, because, and that's what was happening a little bit yesterday in the discussion. And again, I'm gonna reiterate, it was an awesome discussion, man. I would say this the going back and forth, and there was a lot of little disagreement, but it was peaceful disagreement, man. It was loving. I don't think anybody quit as a result. Sometimes that happens. That's happened that I knew before. Somebody will say something, somebody will come in and say, okay, but what about this? Do it peacefully, and the person will leave, never comment again. Some people are just not open to correction like that. Now, Christopher Magnetic, you left a comment, which I thought was a great comment, really good comment. It wasn't a comment, excuse me, it was a question. And he also reached out to me on Instagram, but he said, peace, everyone. It's my first time trying to call in, which we know we couldn't call in yesterday on a blog talk because it was a little tech thing. And he said, is there any decorum for doing so? That question could be framed. Is there any decorum? Whoever asked that? How do I purport myself? You see, that's culture right there. That's culture. Is there any decorum for doing so? He's acknowledging right there that I recognize I just came into a different culture. How do I do this? Beautiful question, brother. Just be respectful. That's the decorum. Be respectful. And we are ageist here. I know we speak against ageism a lot in the West, but I am a sexist and I am an ageist. Okay, so people of different ages are treated and dealt with differently. People of different sexes are treated and dealt with differently. Okay, so that's a large part of the decorum. That's why, if you notice, Brother Byron called in the show yesterday and kind of shut it down. Well, that's what's supposed to happen when a Baba speaks, or even when the EI speaks, keep it real. But when a Baba speaks, I mean, I know everybody's age for the most part, but and not only is he a Baba, but he's Awo Eshu. He's a priest of Eshu. So you had an Awo and a Baba, and senior brother to many other people who were speaking yesterday. That's who's always supposed to shut it down. The senior brother, the senior sister is always, kind of going to shut it down. So I'm an ageist in that sense. It's not to say that if you're younger or whatever that you're ignored, but definitely open your ears and be respectful even more respectful to those who are, ahead of you on the road, who started out a little bit or a lot bit, depending, before you did. All right. But again, like I said, the idea of the finances there, man. I'm just scanning through. It's mutable. Sequoia says the love's good. How can working for another man's organization be in the man's slash family interests? Let's see if she answered. Or he. I'm sorry. I don't know if love's good is a male or female. Oh, she didn't. He or she didn't answer that. Yeah, it can't be, and the man of family's interest. See, that's the thing where we deal with the cold transaction. That question that Sister Sequoia asked: how can working for another man's organization be in a man slash family's interest? It never is. Now we'll say, oh, because you can get finances and wealth and bring it back into the house and do such and such and such and such. No. But how does it affect the overall mental structure, spirit, and culture of the home when you do something like that? See, that's what we have to pay attention to, that we don't so often. And a lot of times when there's a breakup, that's what happens, man. If you may have a woman working within your economy, and this is the men, you break up, what's the first thing she does? She goes and works for another man's economy. Half the time, she does the things that she was supposed to do when she was in your economy. Sometimes that was the reason why you broke up, because she just couldn't see doing it for you. She just couldn't picture herself doing that, because the program, some people are just so used to. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to from an entrepreneurial perspective who have jobs that they can't stand. And we start looking at timelines. We say, okay, 4 or 5 years from now, you'll be in your own business. And they say, yeah, but I still want to keep my job here at the same time, or at least try to go part-time so I have this check coming in. Plantation addiction. You see, they can't imagine, moving beyond that. They can't imagine letting go of that teat, no longer suckling that toxic milk of the Western economy. They just can't imagine it, So often, a lot of times, even with families, it's the same thing. Like I said, you have that brother who's 30, 35, making 30, 35, $25,000 a year. And one of the comments that was mentioned is that a man should be able to support his homestead. Absolutely. He would have to, if you think about it, because look at it like this. I'm a strong advocate of pushing boys out early. So early, it might shock you. But I'm an advocate, like pushing a boy out 15, 16 years old. He should be on his own. Now, yeah, you're going to come by and visit and check on him and things like that. 15, 16 years old, he should have his own space. I'll give you this idea. In a compound environment, right? Let's say if it's you and your compound and your wives, and I'm using the word wives even though I don't practice with free. So let me use the word I actually do use. Let me open y'all up to that. Consorts. Let's say it's you got 3, 4, 5 consorts. Now, I know a lot of y'all are not into plural relationships. That's fine. It's this example still works the same way, but I'm speaking my language. All right. And you have, let's say maybe your compound sits on maybe 10 acres, right? Not that big, but 10 acres is decent. You got your little, the sisters have their little herb gardens or whatever. You may have a couple animals. You got your shrine, family shrine. Each sister has her own place, not her own room per se, but her own structure. It could all be attached to the main structure in a way. And then you have a multi-purpose structure, where the family gathers. And then you may have structures outside of that where the boys live. See, that's to me, that's how it should be done. 15, 16 years old, they need to be on their own, man. Now, they may still be on your land. You may provide them that, but they should have built at least 60% of their own home. It's not that hard. By the time a boy is 15, 16 years old, half the time he's big and almost as strong as you are. He can build a home. He can be taught that. He can be taught those skills, man. I'm telling you. Again, we live in a society where they tell us, Well, you're not an adult till you're 18. But in some states in America, the age of consent, sexual consent, is between 12 and 14. In most states, it's 16. The age of sexual consent. You got some states where 12 is the age of sexual consent. So I can have sex and make a baby at 12, you telling me, but I'm not an adult till I'm 18. I can't even buy liquor till I'm 21. But at 18, I can go into the military and kill people or be killed, and it's perfectly fine. But I can't buy liquor. Pure madness, man. It's pure madness. It's insane. You have to determine what your culture is supposed to be, man. You know, so I'm just saying, man, you know, you have to really think about this, man. So yeah, man, boys got to be put out early, man. Put them suckers out early. So that means you got to train them early, right? That's all that means. You got to start them early. They have to learn how to hunt early. They got to learn how to develop businesses early. Their schooling has to be a bit different, and their sense of independence has to come in much sooner. So that means, you know, you may have boys that by 16, 17, 18 years old, you know, have already had one or two failed businesses. They may have some physical scars, you know, they may, you know, different things have happened. They've taken some bumps and bruises. The girls, no, it's different. Can't push the girls out early. You make them too hard. The girls stay with mommy and baba until, you know, they're brought into a family. They're absorbed into another man's family. And just because she's absorbed into another man's family, it doesn't mean you lost your daughter. It means now your family is bigger. See, that's the mind state you have to have. We didn't lose a daughter. Like they say, you didn't lose a daughter, you gained a son. It's true, even though it's corny, you know, but it's true. So we never saw that as that back home. We saw the interwebbing of family trees, which built empires and built economies. You see, so yeah, man. A lot of times we just have a really horrible way of looking at things because we live in a backward society. So you have to look at what may harm the family. You know, yeah, a woman going out and working for another man's interest is never good. No, that's never good. You know, we may say, but it's just money. She's just even though the transactions may feel cold, no transaction, financial or otherwise, is devoid of spiritual content. Even when you use the bank notes, there's a reason why it has all those occult symbols on it, because they understand, those who have designed those bills, Freemasons, that the exchange of currency is a spiritual process. There's a certain way I hand people money. One day, maybe one of you around me, you'll see it. But there's a certain thing that I do. You know, it's never arbitrary. There's a certain way I even hold money on my person, because I recognize what it is. You know what I mean? But yeah, so that, to answer that question, that was the question that she put out there, Sister Sequoia. How can work for another organization be in a man/family's interests? Usually isn't. You know, but again, remember, when you live in a community where there's no interweaving of family, then, like, let's say for instance, you got a woman and she works for her uncle, or she works for her sister's husband, right? Then she's still working with family. So, you know, in certain communities, you'll have that. In certain village settings, you'll have that. And I'm saying village, but even town settings, there's an interweaving of things in that sense. You see, now you may have sisters that go out and work for pharmacies and stuff like that. But trust me, man, even when you have a situation where you got a sister who's working at a pharmacy or whatever, the boss has met her parents. Believe you me, the boss has met her parents. They probably know each other, probably went to school with each other. So the sense, the idea and the sense of family is much different in other places. In many places, if you've gone to school, and what I love, I'm going to add this one in, but in many places, if you go into school with someone and that's your school, your childhood cohort, or even you might have went to secondary school or high school with each other. Later on, you'll refer to that person as your brother or your sister, just like you would your blood brother or sister. You see, now what I'm going to throw in there is that the youth that I had in my school, they refer to each other as their brothers. And the reason why I'm giving them that big up and prop is because I never told them to do that. Like, we would always say brother this. They always call me, Baba or brother Haru, but I never said these are your brothers. And when you graduate, still look at them as your brother. We never really had that talk with them. I guess it was implied in some ways, but no, not really. And now when I see them on social media, on Snapchat and Twitter and Instagram, they refer to each other as like, yo, that's my brother so and so. So you start to see that again when you infuse certain values and principles. The the village mindset, it's already waiting. It's sitting there waiting to come out. It'll come out. And these guys, like I said, man, these guys in their 20s. Let me see. Count the years. 2000, what are we, 2017? 14? Yeah, some of these guys are 26, 27 years old. And these are they're godparents to each other's children. They put up pictures of the weddings, at the whole cruise and what, because that's the culture that they were raised under in that sense. And sad to say, when we started to expand the school, I started to see when that culture was being harmed and deteriorated. When we were no longer small because of quote unquote success. We were able to get a bigger budget and to hire, more teachers and things like that. But those teachers were not necessarily a part of that beginning culture, and we didn't properly orientate them into the culture. And as a result, I can see the difference between some of the later students, and it's a huge difference really between the later students and the earlier students. So even now, so many years later. But like I was saying, so yeah, to answer some of those questions, like I said, it was still a great discussion. And you see it in that room. A lot of people were saying, yeah, this has been a great discussion. And it really was, so again, kudos to all of you who participated in that and the questions that were put forth. And like I said, just remember that you're learning. So there's going to be a lot of things that you may come up with that feel good to you and sound right to you, but they're completely off. And as you grow and you learn, just be open to growing and learning. That, new ideas, new thoughts are going to be brought in. Like I said, even with the example, I don't think I even finished the example. I went off on something else, but you got a guy making $25,000, $30,000 a year. He meets a woman. She's making $25,000, $30,000 a year. Doesn't mean that she quits her job and says, okay, well, now you're going to take care of me. No, now they combine their incomes, but the finances and the money have very little to do with the economy. Doesn't mean that she doesn't manage the house because they're making the same amount. It doesn't mean now that because they're making the same amount that he has lessened intellectual capacity. So now they have to make all their decisions jointly. It doesn't mean that. Wage earning or the frequency of wage earning is no determinant of intelligence. So, and I know in this society where capitalism is revered among, above all, sometimes we do that. And I saw those little slick comments in the chat yesterday. Well, if we're both making money, then we have to come to a decision. So now, because we both making money, you think now you're going to be making demands and I'm going to have to negotiate with you. No. Again, like I said, if I'm making $250,000 a year, she's making $600,000 a year. I'm still not negotiating with you. It doesn't mean that I'm inflexible. And that's something that a lot of brothers have to understand too. You got to learn to be flexible, man. This time, you don't always have to be so hard on everything because each relationship that you're going to be in is different. Each woman all women are pretty much the same. Not even pretty much, all women are the same. Even though they tell you how different they are, they're not. They're all the same, but they all want different things at different degrees, but they all want the same thing. But some just want more of certain things or less of certain things. And as a result, you have to learn to be flexible in that sense. People are not as complicated as they try to make themselves appear. Sometimes that's the downfall of relationships. Everyone acts like they have all these special requirements and they're just being inflexible. Women want security. They want to feel protected. They want a connection with you. They don't want to feel like they're out in the desert and the wilderness by themselves. They want stability. They want excitement. They want sensuality. They want direction. I mean, we can go right through the list. And there's not one woman listening right now to be like, I don't want that. And she may add something and say, but I also want this. But I guarantee you what you also want is what other women. And I haven't gone through the whole list, of course. But they all want the same things. And as a man, when you're building your empire, part of your job is to learn what those things are. Learn if you have it in you. Are you stable? Can you provide stability? And maybe your stability may not be as glamorous as you may want it. Like you may say, well, hey, I can buy this 10-year-old Honda or Toyota. And I know every time I turn that key, this thing is going to start up. But, it doesn't have leather. Maybe it doesn't even have auto. Here, I'm going to give you a good example right here. Boom. Because I used to do this a lot when I was younger. I used to purposely buy base model cars when I was younger. Well, no, I went through my phases. At a certain time in my life, because at one point I was all about luxury. And then, when I was very, very young, I used to buy a lot of luxury cars, like, Beamers and Benzes and stuff like that. And I mean, really young, like barely in my 20s. And at that point, sometimes I would put my money together and all my money went to the purchase of the car, which may not have been a brand new Benz or a brand new Beamer, but still new enough that I was in there, But if you don't know about German cars, they're not the most reliable and the repairs are very expensive. But all my money just went into buying a car. So now I'm scrambling dough together to pay for little stupid repairs, little electrical things. Or I had a Benz years ago, one of these Benzes that I bought, and it was a beautiful car too, man. And and there was something wrong with the relay and the horn, and the horn used to just go off sporadically. Couldn't figure out why. I'd be driving, the horn would just, and I'd have to turn the steering wheel all different ways to get the horn to stop. So it was a wire pinching. It was either relay or wire pinching in it, but I had to take out the steering column to get to it. So eventually I just took the horn fuse out of the car, and I was driving around with no horn. Wow. But when you're young and dumb, you do stuff like that. So when I needed somebody to move or something, I had to roll down wind my window down and yell out the window, yo, man, get out the way, because I ain't have a horn. But I was still fly though. I was flossing, you know what I mean? Leather interior, sunroof, it's a Benz. Come on, I'm doing it. Then as you mature a little bit, you realize, well, hey, you know what? Man, all my money is going to little stupid repairs on this doggone car. And maybe if I get something that maybe is not as flossy, get me a little Chevy or something, I have more money left over to do other things. And I'll be more stable. There was times I was on dates and that doggone car left us stranded. We were looking good on the side of the road. So little dumb repairs, so a part of sometimes a man building this kingdom, like I said, women want stability. So you may say, you know what, I'm going to get me that 10 or 15-year-old car that maybe some elder had sitting in the garage for 10 years because they can't drive anymore. It's a brand new car. No, they haven't even driven it, but maybe, and this is what I started to do, I would buy base model cars that didn't even have power windows. Because I'm like, man, power window, that's just another thing to break. I'll roll it up. People will pull on the side of me, ask for directions. I got to reach over and roll the window. That's all right. But I know it's not going to break. I would get rid of all the bells and whistles. Nah, I don't want a car with turbo. I don't want, no. Until I was able to get my money together in a way where my passive income could pay for my luxuries. All right. Jim, message. Passive income pays for your luxuries, not your earned income. So when I started building up my kingdom, my financial kingdom in a way, then I was able to say, okay, now I can mess around and get me another, this, get a Jaguar, get a Benz, whatever. Because now, I can move differently, and I can have those cars and still not lose my financial stability like I was doing before. You see? So that may mean, like I said, brothers, that you may be making 25, 30, $40,000 a year, depending on where you live. That may be a lot of money or maybe a little money, depending on where you live. But you want to make sure that you have certain baseline things taken care of. You want to make sure that you have house stability or housing stability. So that may mean that maybe you don't have the best house, or you don't have the largest apartment. Maybe your house is a fixer upper. Half the house you have, plasticed off. You're still working on it. You buy a house that, maybe again some elders lived in. It hasn't been updated since the 60s. And you're working it, but it's a decent neighborhood, it's safe, and it's yours. And you just got to put that work in and to get up to pace. And she might see it and look at it like, oh, you only got one bathroom in here, it's a 2-bedroom house, and not much of a yard and everything, but I'm in no fear of losing it. I can handle the payments. The mortgage is nothing. Or maybe you paid it off. Maybe, you just bought it outright. It's paid for, and yeah, my car doesn't look so great, but hey, it's paid for. So there's some stability here, and then as you start to build, you take those steps, you might get a better house. You might rent that one out, and then you move into something else. You might give that old car you had, man, give that to your nephew or your niece, as a graduation present or something, and you buy something else. You step up because you're building on stable platforms. Stability breeds stability. You can't create stability from instability. It won't work. So you have to stabilize at your baselines, at your root places where you can. Start where you can and then work forward from there. So yeah, man, like I said, the conversation was great. It was great. And Brother Keely says, no romance without finance. Absolutely. Purse first, behind last. Yeah, you make sure your money is in order properly, man. Because again, all of those things allow you to set your culture. A sister comes into that, and and a wise sister will see what you're doing. A wise sister will say, okay, well, his car's not all that. And, I remember speaking to a sister I was dealing with one day about that. She was talking about one of her exes. And she was talking about how he worked these 2 jobs and really hustled and scraped because his dream was to have a Range Rover. And she said, when he finally bought the Range Rover, he bought this, he finally got one. It was used. It was, it wasn't the newest model, but, she said she was proud of him because he did what he had to do to get it. And even though it wasn't a brand new one and everything, she was happy to ride in it. She was happy to be in it because of what he went through to get it, So a wise woman will see what you're doing. She'll have a little bit of insight to be able to say, okay, I see what this brother is putting forth, and he's not blowing his money, man. He's not trying to look rich. He's trying to be rich, so he understands that it's a process, and I want to be a part of his process, or I want to be a part of this kingdom. I want to absorb myself into this mission. I see where he's going with this. There's a mission. There's a direction, Now, in that same example, that sister, actually, she said the problem was with the brother with the Range Rover. After a while, he lost sight and really thought that he was something. He took on this grandiose air because he had this old used Range Rover. So he lost direction, if he ever had any direction. Or maybe his only direction was to have material things in life. You see. So yeah, man, it's important to be able to make those distinctions. All of that I'm speaking about the distinction between your finances and your economy and your kingdom. 3 different things. And yes, in order for you to have a queen, you have to be a king. I know many sisters will jump out there and tell you they're queens, but that's fairy tales. That's just fairy tale. You know, I'm queen so-and-so. Where's your queendom? You know, so just, I ignore that when I hear that. Actually, when I hear that, I go the other way because I already know it's going to be a problem. You know, but you have to establish the kingdom first. That's the foundations, and that's the stability it's built on from there. I know in our communities, we're told that the woman is the foundation. But open up your window and look outside at your community. You were tricked. You were duped. Or, you know, in the words of the honorable elder, you were led astray, run amok, bamboozled. That's not how civilizations and kingdoms are built. They're not built upon the backs of women. That's a trick. Okay, it doesn't work that way. So men, you have to establish that first. And again, like I said, your civilization may not be a multi-million-dollar economic empire or financial empire. It might be a 20 or 30 or 40 or 50,000. It's fine. It doesn't mean that you deserve any less respect. It's about the mindset that goes into it. Just like when you speak about polygyny, you know, any of you brothers who are interested in practicing it, and some of you reached out to me about polygyny, let me tell you something, man. And I don't consider myself a polygynist, by the way, you know, but I do know a lot about polygyny. Polygyny is not about having multiple wives. I know, big shocker there, right? Polygyny is not about having multiple wives. Get that out of your mind. Just get that out of your head. It has very little to do with that. And I know what the word means by definition. I know I don't need anybody to now put a comment and say polygyny is defined as, all right, follow along. In order to become a polygynous individual, you have to take on the polygynous mindset first. And you have to understand, like some people say, I'm married to my work, right? I'm married to my art. I'm married to my craft. Well, when you're dealing with polygyny, you're dealing with multiple marriages. So you start to understand that polygyny has more to do with polyrhythmic activity and polythinking than it does with just having a bunch of women. You could have one woman and still be a polygynist because it's how your mind frame is set up. So then once you set your mind frame set up a certain way where you're handling multiple things, you may have multiple businesses, you may have multiple homes, multiple streams of income, multiple assets, multiple investments. Then you'll start to see where multiple women come into place. You may be taking care of multiple children, you know. So there's a poly culture or poly mindset that you have to take on first. And let me tell you, if you don't have the ability to do any of those things, don't be thinking about one or two women or two or three women. Just, it's not for you. It's not for you. It's more than just, can you take care of two or three women? Once you start understanding the poly mindset, you understand it ain't even about taking care of two or three women. Because them women better be coming with some resources. They better be coming with more than just a vagina saying, well, I make the babies. That ain't that important. A lot of people can make the babies. That's not that important. You know, what are you bringing that enhances and flourishes this economy? Now, when you're thinking like that, you won't just be thinking about, I want to walk down the street or go to the African Day Festival with two queens so everybody can see I got two queens. Get over that. It ain't even about that. You may have one sister. You may be with one sister for 20, 30 years and still consider yourself polygynous. It gets deeper, man. It gets so much deeper than these little corny YouTube videos that people keep putting out about polygyny, yes or no? Are you down for polygamy? Polyandry versus polygyny. Man, they don't know that. You know, 90% of those people are not even in polygynous relationships. They never have been. They're just talking, you know. But like I said, brothers, build the empire, man. And whether you're a polygynous person or a monogamous person, that's going to determine what the empire looks like. And that may mean that for 20, 30, 40 years, that you're developing that mindset of whatever one it is. You're developing the mindset, most importantly, of an emperor, because that's who's running the empire, the emperor. So you're developing that empirical mindset. That's why you'll be able to get to the point where, like I said recently, I tell somebody, you're not allowed to talk to me that way. And you say it with surety. You know yourself. You have that self-respect. You're self-aware. You're self-defining. You're self-actualizing. Nah, I'm an emperor. Who the hell you think you're talking to? Get out my face. Done. You'll then what will happen is you'll see other emperors, other people, and you'll be able to say, oh, I understand why they do that. You start to, maybe read things or watch period pieces or look at documentaries about different rulers and kings, whether it be back in Africa or be all around the world. And you'll understand why they're doing the things the way they're doing, why they set up their military away, why their royal court is set up a certain way, this, that, and the third. And it will all of a sudden, why having a male heir was so important, why the daughters and the female heirs, were so important for a certain thing, and the male heirs were important for another thing. Why you were able to create kinship bonds to your children, why that became so important. You have someone over there that you're doing business with. He has a son, you have a daughter, you arrange a marriage. Now you and this individual in this neighboring country, you now become allies through marriage, which strengthens everybody, your children, the kingdom, everyone. You understand why that becomes important. You see, so you want to make sure you have resources so your family and your empire becomes attractive for other people to want to marry into. Not just that your children are cute, and it goes beyond that. But when you start to develop that sense of thinking, you'll come to a point where you can see the relevancy in empire building and why things are done a certain way. I'm gonna go to the comments, then we're gonna close out soon. So Sister Sequoia says, does anybody know the difference between being a concubine versus a wife? Well, you said anybody, so I'm gonna let the room answer that. Kia says, I have practiced polygyny. I was 19 and head office manager for the paving company. First woman was a nurse. Okay, cool. That's cool. Yeah, polygyny is not for the weak of heart, man. Let me tell you, it doesn't come along with the conscious package. Some people think I'm conscious, now I gotta go practice polygyny. It's not for everybody, man. It takes a high level of emotional, mental, and spiritual development to do it properly. And I have to say, honestly, that level of development is rare. And I don't mean just in the man. I know a lot of times we put it on the man. A lot of men ain't ready for polygyny. Yeah, well, a lot of men ain't ready. A lot of women ain't ready. So it takes that, man. And one of the things that cannot be present is insecurity. And we live in a culture where insecurity is cultivated at every fabric of this social structure. You cannot be insecure and be in a plural relationship. It will not work. It's death, insecurity. So if you have that, you have to deal with that first, because that's the gateway to so many other vile and wicked feelings, like jealousy. Can't be a jealous person, male or female. Can't be a jealous person. Sometimes as a man, the sisters are gonna vibe with each other more than they vibe with you. You're gonna see them creating their own corporate body, and that's really how you want it to be. But sometimes that's hard for certain men to deal with. They don't understand how the structure of the relationship is supposed to be, because they want each woman to be their best friend and stuff like that. And I tell you now, man, even in a healthy marriage, you can't really be friends with your mate. I know what the society told you. Your husband and your wife are supposed to be your best friend. And we see them little beautiful commercials. I married my best friend. And see how soon your divorce comes. Sometimes we put way too much pressure on our mates to be too many things. You gotta be my best friend, my lover, my confidant, my therapist. That's a huge one. You gotta be my therapist. So you dump all your toxins and garbage on your mate. And who says they have any ability to process them any better than you? You don't care. You just need someplace to dump it. So again, you take that time, man, and you really learn. I noticed nobody answers Sequoia's question. Maybe you guys don't know. Maybe I'll get into that in another segment, concubinage versus wife. But let me just say this before I get off. A concubine is not a side chick. All right. So a lot of times people will hear that term. I've heard women ask me similar questions before. You know, brother, this brother came to me, say he wanted to be his concubine. I'm nobody's whore. You know, it's like, no, that's not what a concubine is. Again, you got to be able to qualify the terms. Don't just take what people have told you, you know, or you've overheard, and, you know, run with it. Just like somebody say a mistress. Mistress is just the feminine, you know, form of master. So you have a mistress of the house, you have a master of the house. Well, you say mistress, it's like, oh, that's the side whore. That's the home wrecker, you know, or the concubine's a home wrecker. No. There's rules, you know, depending on your culture. Again, for concubinage, I'll give you one small example. And again, I'm not going to get into it too much right now. Maybe maybe I could talk about that tomorrow. Do a show on that. Anybody's, you know, but one of the reasons why a person may take on a concubine as opposed to making that person a full-fledged consort is because sometimes you may meet a woman as a man, and, you know, seeking wisdom, always got something to say. My husband is my friend, best friend, Pete this, emperor. Okay, that's great for you, seeking wisdom. Anyway, seeking wisdom always got something left to say. But sisters, don't pay attention to what she just said. My husband is my friend, my best friend, and Pete this, emperor. He's not those things. She doesn't know what she's talking about. But that's why she's here to learn. All right. So anyway, let's get back to it. Sometimes you may take on a concubine because, I'll give you an example of something that happened to me a while ago. I met a woman, really beautiful spirit, real nice woman. And at the time, she wanted to join my family, and she lived a few states away from where I was at that time. And she wanted to move to where I was. The thing is, though, she owned a very successful hair salon where she lived, natural hair salon. It was like the first natural hair salon in well, it's a popular metropolis, in that metropolis, you know. And she also had just finished buying a house, and she had an elderly mother that she was taking care of, right? So I said to her, I said, listen, you really don't need to be moving where I'm at. That doesn't even make sense. And she was older than me, actually, at the time, you know, well, still is, but she was older than me by, man, what did she have me by? I don't even remember. Maybe 8 years, something like that. She was considerably older than me. And I said, listen, a couple things here. Number one, you're probably not going to have any children at this point. And she said, yeah, I think something was up. She couldn't have children or something like that. So based on that, I couldn't make you my main consort because we can't even have children together. You know, so that can't happen, number one. Number two, it wouldn't make sense for you to leave what you've established here, because you've created a beautiful community portal, having this natural hair place in this environment. You know, this is something that's important for our people, you know, so I wouldn't want to pull you from that. And more importantly than anything else, and you just buying a house and all that, you taking care of your mother. So what's going to happen if you move? You know, she said, well, you know, my brothers and my sisters, they'll have to step up to the plate. I was like, no. We're not doing that. You know, not at this point. If she was younger, maybe it might be, because then her mother would be younger, you know, maybe be a little bit different. But I said, you've already rooted and established something here. And I said, let's really look at this. Do you really feel like you need to be with me every day? And she was like, yeah, of course, Baba. I said, no, really think about it. You know, I said, what do you really want? And, you know, and I had that conversation with her. And, you know, by the time we were done, I was like, yeah, if I saw you 2-3 times a month, I'm sure you'd be fine. She was like, yeah, actually, that would be cool. And I could still run my business and take care of mother. And I said, yeah. So see that now, that's a situation where concubinage will come in. So a concubine would be someone who, she's still a part of your family, but she doesn't have the same governing responsibilities or voice as maybe a woman who may live in the home with you. So you may have two women who live in the home with you, and they're having discussions around managing the homestead. The concubine doesn't live there, so she's not going to be able to say, "Well, I think you should wash the dishes on Tuesdays." And no, you don't you don't live here, so you don't know what kind of thing goes on. Now, I'm just giving you very light and easy an example, but that's a real world example, of why someone may say, "Okay, this person, maybe because of their circumstances, she should be covered, she should be a part of a homestead, but maybe because of her circumstances of what she's established, she has developed an economy and things like that. Plus, this is a woman who had been married before, as well, and that's why I said, you really want to be like married again? Think about it. She's like, she, at the time, she didn't realize that there was a choice. But the thing is, when you're establishing a relationship beyond the titles of concubine or wife or whatever, my queen, whatever you want to use, don't get so caught up on the title so much. Like I said, men got to be flexible. So each relationship is going to call for something different. Now, me dealing with this sister, like I said, she was a little up there in age. I know her libido wasn't jumping, like maybe some of the younger sisters. So she just needed that thing dusted off, every 10 to 14 days. We're good. She had been by herself. She had been divorced for a good while. So she had gotten accustomed to running her own household and things like that. But she needed a lot of direction with her business. Well, she needed a lot of direction with her business and this new house she just bought. But it wasn't like she couldn't be alone. Like she couldn't, like if she wasn't with me every night, she was going to go crazy. Like she could be in her house by herself for 5 or 6 days. And the truth is, and I mean, we spoke about this later, but the truth is, a lot of times, sometimes we want to be alone, especially as we get up in age. Sometimes we don't want people around us all the time. We kind of get used to our own rhythm, and again, as you get older, some people want the sheets folded a certain way, or the bed made a certain way, or they like to burn scented candles in the bedroom. It stinks. And stuff like that. And or you have some sisters who maybe are not the best at home management, right? So, and I've said this to plenty of sisters before, like if you don't have strong domestic skills, there's no reason you need to be in my domestic environment. You don't need to be living with me, because you're in my space now, and you now become more of a headache. You might have a sister who's maybe just not that neat. Not to say that she's dirty, but maybe she builds clutter, right? And she may have been doing this for a long time. And the truth is, her moving in with someone right now, she may say, "Oh, this would be good because this will force me to clean up." It won't. It'll force you to be miserable. So, if it's a situation where, like, okay, you see this sister maybe just on the strong ends, or like I said, every 10 days, every 14 days, whatever, then she can kind of live how she wants to live, and when you come to visit, or she comes to visit you, you might not even go to her place. She may come to, but when you come to visit, then she know, okay, well, my man's coming over this Friday, Wednesday and Thursday, I'm gonna clean up, make everything right for him, make sure there's food in the fridge, just that. And then when he leaves Sunday, back to business on Monday. I'm leaving the cap off the toothpaste and, doing all the things that I'm doing. That's fine. When we're younger, a lot of times our ego, especially as men, as young men, we haven't really balanced out our ego yet. We haven't gotten control of it. So we meet a sister and we like, this is how you're going to fold my clothes, iron my clothes this way, wash my clothes. We get into some of that craziness, man. And you may be telling her how to iron and wash her clothes, and you should do this and pull them shades shut and. And as you get older, you start to learn to appreciate and respect the woman a little bit more for what she brings, respect her more for her mind beyond her sex. Because sometimes that, the hypersexual activity we have when we're younger, we start to develop these really weird senses of control and ownership over females because we don't know how to handle our own sex yet. And then after a while, you get a little older, and you realize, man, she owned that yoni before she met me, and she gonna own it after we not together too. So, I'm not even gonna ask her whose it is when we're in bed, because that's just kind of a waste. I'll ask her something else. But as you get older, you start to learn to really value and appreciate each other's thing that they bring. And men, it's a beautiful thing when, again, you set up the structure and the foundation. Like I said, what if you got some land in a compound? You got sisters living on it. Each sister has her own space. So let's say if you got 2 or 3 sisters on your space, or heck, let's just do this. Let's say if you got 1, if you're monogamous. And I'll tell you, I'm an advocate of men and women not living in the same house together. Just so everybody gets that. I'm an advocate of that. All right. Not to say that you live in one state or one town, she live in, no, not that. You could live on the same land. You could even have homes that are connected to each other, or you could buy a 2-family house. But I'm an advocate of men having their own space and women and the children having their own space. Especially as men, if you entertain other men, you shouldn't always bring other men around your woman. Sometimes you cause unnecessary problems that could have been avoided. Some men are not strong enough to be around, especially if you got your woman tight, your home is tight, children clean, everything's in check. Sometimes another man to see that, man, and lose his mind, not know how to act. He'll start trying to talk to your woman. He'll start finding social media accounts for your woman and be inboxing her. He never seen a woman, that beautiful, because she's at peace, man. She's in a right home with a right man, and everything is in order, in place. And that other guy doesn't realize, man, I didn't come ready made. You put work in, man. You built that. You built that environment, man. And you may have built that up in that woman, that level of peace and relaxation that she has. He'll see that, man, start acting stupid, man, and try to get with your woman, man. So, that's why in older times we had what was called the harem. And people, when they say harem, they always think it's just a bunch of women. But the harem was where the women and children stayed. So that way, when as the emperor or whomever, and it wasn't just royalty who had harems, by the way, but it was basically the space on the land where the women and the children stayed. And that's a form of protection. Imagine when all your male friends come over. No, they weren't. What if they're not exposed to your daughters and your sons, or even females come over who may be pedophiles and you don't even know it? You're not exposed to my family like that. No, where's your wife and they live in the back of the compound. Well, they're gonna come. No, they're not gonna come out front. Just we here up here. You see, so if you notice, even in ANU, I don't know who my family is. Like I said, I put that one thing in my youth up finally, but you don't know who my women are. You see, there's some wisdom in that, man. Pay attention to that. It's not an ego thing. Well, yeah, I'm with this one and with that. You get beyond the ego thing, man, and learn that there's certain things you got to do for protective measures for your family. That's your job. But in the same instance, like I said, man, each relationship is different. There's no hard set rules. Well, this culture says that culture says that. You got to do it this way. You got to do it that way. There's none of that, man. But you do have to understand and learn the primal value. So whether, again, like I said, you call them your concubines or your queens or your wives or your empresses or whatever it is that you say, or my husband, my mate, my man, my king, whatever it is that you go beyond the title, and whatever title that you end up using, make sure that it has relevant significance to the culture of the actual relationship. Do what's good for the kingdom. Sometimes what's good for the kingdom is you might have a sister who, you don't live with. And like I said, I'm an advocate of not living with sisters anyway. I'm an advocate. I'm a strong advocate of that. Men, a lot of times that's how you lose your drive and testosterone, by being around women too much. You know, you're just in women's world too much. Women, sometimes that's how you lose your zeal and excitement for the relationship. You know, when I have women around me, I let them know, put this lingerie on. That's how I want you moving around my house, man. When I come in and walk by you and grope you, I better be feeling on some satin or some silk or something nice. Like, but no, don't be walking around the house in a sweatsuit or your flannels. Now, if when you're in your own space, if you want to walk around in flannels and a baseball cap to the back, that's all good. Relax and enjoy yourself. When you're around me, this is how I want the presentation. Now, that may not be comfortable for you to keep up. Like some of the things that I like women to wear to bed, they like, listen, it's cold. They'll tell me in a heartbeat, it's cold, man. I want to put my onesie on, man. You want me in this little lace stuff. Yeah, that's what I like. You know, but again, if she's in her own environment, she might go, well, I normally sleep in a onesie, you know, or, you know, I got 3 or 5 different blankets in a sleeping bag, you know, electric blanket. Okay, cool. You know, but you're able to still maintain some of that excitement and enjoyment, enjoy each other in a way when you create a little bit of that separation. So her environment now can be completely feminine. She can have, you know, lavender walls and potpourri in the bathroom and all those different things. And you ain't coming in from the garage putting, you know, a greasy wrench on the kitchen table and stuff like that. And she getting it or working on your computer, got your computer all taken apart on the dining room table, and she's trying to put the food out. You see? So, and the same thing in your environment, man. You can have it set up the way you want it. Maybe you're into fish tanks and you want a shark. And she's like, I don't want that shark around the children or whatever, you know, and or whatever it is you're into. You might have guns and knives on the wall and or whatever it is, but everyone's able to really grow and expand. And let me tell you something. When she comes into your environment, she's gonna love it because she's getting the fullness of your manhood. When you come into her environment, you're gonna love it because you're getting the fullness of her womanhood. You see. And I know these ideas, man, they sound far left or far right for a lot of you. But just remember, what we grew up in is straight up trash. The culture that we were given to grow up in is straight up garbage, man. You know, so again, these and the things that I'm sharing, I haven't necessarily, these weren't taught to me per se. You know, this is from experience, a lot of study, observation that I've understood what works best and what leads to eventual breakdown. You know, and a lot of times people can cite, well, my grandparents lived with each other for 40 years, slept in the same bed and all that. And well, what did they do though? Besides go to church every day and work jobs that they retired from? Were they conscious? Did they actually do anything that, you know? So again, a lot of times we don't understand the different ways we stomp out our potential. You know, we don't get it, man. We don't give each other the proper space and room to be ourselves because again, we have these 6 senses of ownership. And I've often said this, men a lot of times, or males, you poke your noses where they don't belong. You see, like you build a house, if you're building a house from scratch and you build it on a compound, man, you don't need a kitchen in your house. What would you need a kitchen for? You know, so your wife can be in the kitchen, you go there and have a conversation with while she's cooking. Like, you know, I know that's what people do, they're used to it, but that's crazy. Think about when you underneath the car working. Do you like anybody talking to you? No, man, you might hurt yourself. It's frustrating. But a lot of times you're scared to say, babe, can we talk about this later, man? I'm about to, you know, loosen this oil plug. I'm changing my oil. All this oil gonna fall on my face. I can't concentrate. You know, so you'd be surprised, man. You might even design your house. Your wife may say, look, I want a house shaped like a yoni. I want a womb house. You say, fine, I want a house shaped like a phallus. I want to live in a tower. You know, but and then the children might want something different. You know, we want houses shaped like, I don't know, race cars, something. Why not? You know, but I mean, I'm playing around with it, but I'm just saying that sit back and examine the whole structure of how we built our empires and built our economies and our kingdoms, and the demands that we put on each other, which eventually break down and destroy what the relationship should be, and the ideas that we have of finances and who supports who and who takes care of who. And let me just say this and get this real clear. You get a sister who comes along and says, well, you got to support me and finance me. I own you. All right. I own you now. Now that's me. Just to be clear, if I get a sister who's like, well, I don't want to work and I feel like I shouldn't have to work and you should just take care of me. All right, cool. But you are now owned. You are owned lock, stock, and barrel. I don't want to hear anything. I tell you to do something, you jump. No talk back, no nothing. Because essentially, you trying to pimp me. So we're gonna reverse this on you. All right. So I mean, everyone has to work, man. Get that out of your mind. That just because he's a man, he's big and strong, that he's got to go out and do everything. You just sit at home watching TV all day. I've seen that so often, man. Because people have a sick sense of responsibility. They don't know how this thing works, and then you have people who will take advantage of that. So that's what I always put. Oh, that's what you want. Okay, well, you're gonna be owned. Well, no, wait a minute. No, I still have no, you don't get that. So now you decide. Do you want to be bought? Because that's what you're asking, to be bought. Or do you want to come and bring something to the table? And I know we have this theory, or some of you have taken on that theory, that the woman is the table. That's not my theory. All right. So I'm put that out there now. No, you ain't my effing table. You didn't. The table is the structure and the frame that things sit on. I built the civilization as I was supposed to. That's my job. I'm supposed to build a civilization. So no, I'm not buying you. Sometimes you hear that with polygyny. Well, can you afford 3 wives? What am I, Arab person trader? I'm not buying wives. We're coming together and building on top of what I've built. But I'm not buying you. That's crazy. If any of you guys think you got to buy wives, I'm going to tell you an easier thing to do. Just get some hoes. Just buy this. Just rent hookers equipment for the night. It's much easier if you're gonna have that conversation about buying a person, and financing a person. Just get a hooker. It's much easier. It's much less headache. Now, if you want the relationship to be beyond that, then you're gonna have to sit down at the table with your woman and say, "Look here, sister, I'm not supporting you. Now, there's a higher and a bigger mission that we're both going to support, and we're going to use our individual talents and tools to support that higher mission. All right, but you're an adult just like I'm an adult. All right, and I'm going to show you how to use your talents, and no one's going to be overworked. That's the whole point in us getting together, to take some of the burden off of each other, not for you to place all of your burden on my shoulders now, just because somebody told you I'm a government mule. And that's just what I love doing. Nah. I want to sit around and watch TV just like you all day, but I can't. Somebody got to handle the responsibilities. So that's what happens when you're dealing with wise, mentally mature people. Then they understand those things. I'm just looking in the chat room. Sequoia says, sisterhood is important. Let's confide in one another. Here's my email. Good. It's good y'all talking to each other. I see y'all got distracted by that seeking wisdom stuff. Man, she over here talking crazy. We don't listen to seeking wisdom. She always say something out of left field. Let me read some of this craziness. And I already know it's crazy, just for me scanning it real quick. Now, I don't even want to read all of it, but I know she says, because she always says something. Y'all don't even be picking up on it, man. She just be having fun with y'all, saying something crazy. And then, she said, my husband is my friend, my best friend, and peep this, emperor. Bull crap. And she said, they said, well, who do you go? Sister Michelle said, who do you go to when he pisses you off? She said, I go to him. Then she said, do you confide in him in all things you think about him? She said, really not into being pissed off much. Arguments for me are useless. I know the tactics of submission in my union. So Michelle said, I see you are admitting that you do, even though not often. I do as well, even though I've been studying the ANU teachings. She said, yes, I confide in him. Blessed to have a twin flame. Y'all don't even understand what she's saying. Doesn't even make sense. But okay. So then Michelle says, I ask again, who do you resort to when you're angered and emotional because of your partner? She says, Michelle, I have grown beyond that stage. Michelle said, I see. Then she says, seeking wisdom, I want to inquire. If you want to reply, I would be grateful. Do you have sisterhood? Seeking wisdom says, I go to higher self, my God self, and work through my emotions and anger. Kids, like, y'all don't even know, you can't even hear what you're hearing. Then she says, after all of that, Michelle, yes, I'd have a sisterhood. No, she don't. She ain't got no sisterhood. Michelle says, that's Tutu, sister. I know I don't go to my Ori when he leaves his shoes all over the place and gets on me for doing the same. Yeah, sometimes we do that. Sequoia says, sisterhood is important, right? And the sequence said, love you, Chief. Not crazy at all. Oh, yeah, you crazy. I say you crazy, but say you say crazy stuff. Y'all can't even hear, like, see, see, all this seeking wisdom she does, she brings in chaos. She says some things that don't make sense. And then what y'all do is y'all then take it serious. See, I just crack jokes. She said something like that. Oh, my friend, I'm teaching you something about relationships. Like, yeah, sometimes we put too much on our mates. We think they're going to be our best friend. Now, there's science and wisdom in what I just said. It's for you to sit back and think about. She comes back and says, well, my husband's my best friend. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Now, I already know that from some of the statements she said other times in the chat room. She don't know what she's talking about. My husband's my emperor. Then why are you listening to me? Where's your husband at? Tell your husband to come in. Call him, bring him in. You see, so y'all taking that serious and you start asking her questions and then you're not even seeing where she's talking in circles. Oh, when I'm pissed off, I go to my higher self. So now you already know you're dealing with someone who, this rebellious woman right here. She ain't taking direction from anybody. Then she says, I mastered submission in my union. Don't pay attention. She just talking, man. Don't pay attention to that. She playing. She probably just rolling on the floor laughing, looking at y'all taking her serious and the stuff she's saying, man. You got to learn to laugh some of that stuff off sometimes. Sometimes people just play around a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And you got to learn to just you got to know when they're playing. It makes perfect sense, Chief. I love the art of submission. See what she just said? That's her reply to me. It makes perfect sense. Okay, good. Cool. See, now that's supposed to draw me in. First of all, I'll never get drawn in by somebody who doesn't have a picture on their avatar. Because I don't know if I'm talking to a man or a woman, first of all. Or if I'm talking to a Google robot. But aside from that, she's not saying anything. See, this is what I'm saying. You got to learn a lot of times, y'all got to learn when you're talking to somebody who has the key and when you're talking to somebody who's a distraction. You got to know the difference. Some people there'll be a conversation that's flowing, we're going somewhere, and some people come in and say something out of left field. I see it all the time in the group. Yeah, she's still going. Very serious, Chief. My king is very high. I'm not even paying attention to you. I'm not taking anything you say serious, seeking wisdom. Nothing. Because you already said stuff that doesn't make any sense. And this is not the first time I've seen you say stuff that doesn't make sense. And you lack humility in this environment. You're not making any sense. So the fact that you lack humility, even when you speaking to me, shows me that you're not underneath the king. Because you would know how to speak. You in here trying to correct me, and you haven't said anything from a critical standpoint that could actually correct me. You just saying statements. I'm very serious. My king is happy. What does that have to do with what we're talking about? We don't even know if he's a king. We don't know if you're a queen. You guys got to learn to use intuition a little bit sometimes. Now I'm joking and laughing because I think the sister, it's all love. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not taking her serious. I know her energy. I know her spirit. You know, when Spirit Driven was in here acting crazy, she was egging on. Yeah, yeah. You know, she's a little trick. Seeking Wisdom is a trickster. You got to know when you're talking to somebody who's playing tricks, a trickster, and someone who's being serious. And sometimes we get distracted by the tricksters. You know, we go down that road with them, man. You know, I was the one who got off the phone with you because my husband was calling. Okay. And if I remember, you were the one who was on the phone and I had to check you and correct you on some things that you were saying didn't make any sense on the phone. I remember. Yeah, I remember you. I know you. Yeah, man. You know, listen, I know who makes sense, who doesn't, because I know by the approach. If you make sense or if you don't make sense. I know within the first couple of words where your mentality is at, just in how you come in. Again, I'm here teaching. I'm saying da, 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 da. And then you come and say, well, my thing is this. With no explanation, with nothing behind it, nothing. You just talking. You don't know what you're talking about. And anytime I see comments like that, or people ask questions like that, or they start off with, well, if that's the case, how about this? I already know who I'm talking to, because evolved people don't even talk like that. They won't even come into an environment and be like, they might say something like, could you expound on that? Because I always looked at my husband as my best friend and this and that. But you say, my husband, my best friend, my friend, and peep this. Emperor, like you dropping some type of bomb, and peep this. Man, I don't pay no attention to that. If I went into a group of somebody teaching, I would never, you know, get a bracelet. What would Chief do? I would never do that. If somebody was teaching something to a group of people, I wouldn't say, well, hold on a second, because I'm all about economy and I'm all about finances, and peep this. The women love it. What? Come on, man. You just being argumentative. For what reason? That's when you know you talking to a trickster. They just playing tricks. They not being serious. They playing with you. You know? So that's what I'm saying. Look what she did. Michelle engaged me. Peace. This is Seeking Wisdom is saying. I'm just getting, because the show we at the end now. You know, last after 2 hours I can just play. So she said, Michelle engaged me. Peace, Chief. I didn't mean to derail you. This is the third time this woman has put this in the chat about derailing. When Spirit Wisdom was in here and she was going off and I addressed it, she said, oh, she's derailing us. And then she did it on another show talking about derailing. Seeking Wisdom. You believe in your mind that you actually are bringing enough wisdom to derail me. You didn't derail me. This whole conversation, I'm talking about family, building empires, taking authority. And I'm just using you as an example. You didn't derail anything. You didn't say anything with any type of potency for it to derail the show. And as far as Sister Michelle engage and see affirming her intentions, right? You got it, Mama Sadaka. Her intentions were to derail, but she didn't derail. Michelle engaged me. Well, if you didn't want to be engaged, why did you make such a provocative statement? Why did you put it in the chat room? Who were you talking to when you said, and peep this? See what I'm saying? I will humble myself under your authority on your show. Get out of here, Seeking Wisdom. You know what I mean? Oh my goodness. If she was in front of me right now, I would take whatever she's drinking and I would grab my mug of whatever I'm drinking. I would toast to her in the air. One of them big toasts where all the drink spills all over the place. And I'd say, haha, good one, funny. And we toast. And she would say, yeah, you know I like to play. So that's all she's doing right now. She's just playing. But I'm bringing it out as an example for all of you sisters in the chat room who engaged her seriously. So I'm not derailing anything. What I'm doing is cleaning up stuff. Just like when Spirit Driven, of course, Spirit Driven didn't come back, but no, she still listens to the show because she contacts me on Twitter and lets me know the stuff she likes about the show. So she's still listening, but she just decided not to deal with the chat room anymore. But my point is that no, these are all teaching and learning moments. Every single moment. You ain't said nothing. If you said anything that provocative, no, I'm just not paying. I don't know. I just not paying attention to you like that. I know it may feel like it, but you ain't said nothing. Sometimes we think we saying something. We saying a bunch of nothing. Sometimes I get callers on the show like that, calling just a bunch of words and saying nothing. That's all you just did. You said a bunch of nothing. So I'm just letting the sisters know, I don't engage that, man. Y'all got to learn how to see that between what's real and what's not real. Y'all got to be able to see fake crab meat from real crab meat. Just because somebody says something and they can use certain buzzwords in there doesn't mean that they're saying anything of actual value, man. That's how a lot of you get tripped up by some of these fake teachers. They'll come in and they start talking about consciousness, and they'll say the ancestors and my soul and my spirit, and they'll just use a bunch of nice words in a dumb sentence, and you'll hear it and think that because sometimes our listening skills are really poor. So we'll hear one or two words that we identify with, and we think that's the whole of the statement. But you got to listen to the full statement. You see what I'm saying? So no, I'm just using that as an example to break down. I opened up a lot of chambers on this show today, and a lot of people got some good wisdom. I mean, even down to you got some brothers now that's probably sitting there thinking about how they might want to design their home differently than how they were thinking before. Their physical home. Or maybe, heck, maybe I don't need to buy that Audi right now, knowing I can't afford the repairs. I bet maybe I need to look at that Ford Focus, you know, because this is about empire building. So we hit some good chambers today, man, you know. So nah, man, this ain't this is not a distraction at all. This is I like when things like this happen in the moment, because it shows. I bring it out because it shows you it's real. If I tell you, look out for the wolf, look out for the wolf, look out for the wolf, and you don't know what the wolf looks like, then you're still going to get eaten by the wolf. But if I say, look out for the wolf, and then I see a wolf appear and I say, wait, we got a wolf. It's not a derailment. It's an opportunity to show you something in the moment. You see? So that's a part of teaching. You know, we're not walking through the city. We don't really get a whole lot of chances for. She's still going. I understand your authority on your show, Chief. All up. See, she's still going. This ain't even about authority. And why am I saying all of her statements out loud? Because I want y'all to hear it. I understand your authority on your show. See, that's still submersive. That's subversive. I understand your authority on your show. No admission that she says something stupid. She's not going to admit that. She's not going to admit that she has room to be corrected. Why? Because she goes to her higher self. That's who she listens to. That's why she keeps saying crazy stuff. Because she doesn't even know what her higher self is. You could tell. She just listens to herself and just keeps saying stuff that don't make any sense. I understand your authority on your show. This ain't about authority. Ain't nobody checked you. Like I said, we laughing. I'm taking it as a joke. I didn't check you. Y'all have heard me check somebody on the show before. I think y'all know the difference. Y'all know what I sound like when I'm checking somebody. I'm joking. Like I said, if we was in front of each other, I'd toast. I toast to your trickery. You know, I want you students to go through an obstacle course. I really do, honestly. That's why sometimes when you guys say things in the chat that are incorrect, I don't jump in to correct you, because I want you to go through the process of being wrong and then disagreeing sometimes, or debating with each other and coming to a conclusion. That's how you make yourself strong, man. You know, sometimes you got to go through that obstacle course. So just like if I train you to fight the wolf for months, and then the wolf shows up, I'm not going to kill the wolf. I'm going to show you, hey, there's a wolf right there. What you going to do? What you going to do? You know, but I want you to go through the obstacle course, man. And it's through that struggle that you grow, that you become more powerful, you know, that you progress. You got to go through the struggle, you know. So no, I'm pointing these things out so you'll see them next time. You see what she's doing, you know, or you'll see, like I said, remember when I spoke about earlier in the show that a mentally mature man, he knows when you're speaking to him with condescension. He knows when you're being slick. He knows when you're backpedaling. Okay. And he's not going to go for it. So I have two choices: shut it down or laugh at it, which is, you'll at some point realize me laughing at you is shutting you down in the same way. But I'm just doing it in a fun way. But yeah, mentally mature. I mean, we're not stupid. Again, I know that society tells you that you can say little slick stuff to us and stuff, and we won't be able to pick up on it because ultimately we're just big dumb dogs, and y'all are sleek, intelligent, sophisticated cats. You know, the dog can never catch the cat. No. For the most part, we're usually smarter than you. Come on. And if we're responsible for all the ills, as feminism would tell you, then that means whatever slickery that you're utilizing, we created. So how are you going to out-slick me? I see right through your BS. Now, my thing is just, I just want the students to make sure that they can see through the BS as well. So when I see little things pop up, I'll point it out. You know, when it's in the moment, see through to see what's going on right now. You know, when you hear women say stuff like that, oh, I don't do this, I listen to my higher self, that's a woman you shouldn't even be. Don't listen to anything else that comes out of her mouth. We've been talking for years about the roles of men and women and what we do. And we've been saying for years that the man provides guidance and instruction. Right? We've been saying that for a long time. Then you'll have women who will jump in the group and say, well, I listen to my Ori. You're an idiot. Now, I know what y'all going to say. You telling me she's an idiot for listening to her Ori? I had a student say that to me recently, a fake student, ex-student. She called in on the show, and I had to tell her off on the show. Some of you know who she is. And sent me this email. I blocked her email address after this, though. And said, I don't have to listen to you or anybody else. I listen to my ancestors and my Ori. And I just said, why you, what, shut up. Like, why are you even emailing me? But here's the thing. You didn't even know what an Ori was until I taught you what an Ori was. So who are you talking to? You never even heard that word until I taught you. So who are you speaking to? So if you didn't even know what an Ori was, how is it now, months later, you know how to listen to it? You know how to tap into it. And you didn't even know what it was 6 months ago. Now, did I get upset? Did I go? No. I said, okay, you know what? I know how to direct my efforts and my energy and my time. And you have consistently come back with this Willie Lynch bedwinch mentality. No matter what I say as a black man, you ain't going for it. Even in the midst of me teaching you, you still ain't going for it. So get lost. As I told her, yo, just beat it. Get lost. Don't come back around anymore. Get lost. So, you know, like I said, when those things rear their head, it's very clear when someone jumps up and says something that's antithetical to not only what you all have been learning, but what you all have been using to grow as people. You got to pay attention to that. You know, you take a certain thing. This is why I'm saying sometimes you forget the civilization that you've absorbed yourself into. If somebody creates a civilization and you're using that civilization to grow and it's working for you, and then someone says, F this, da, 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 and starts talking something that's antithetical to the cultivation of that civilization, you don't just follow it because it speaks to your lower nature. See, a lot of times certain things that people will say will speak to your lower nature, or they'll speak to the sickness that's already inside of you. So you're quick to go with it, or it feels right. It feels good. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense to your bestial nature. And you may have been living in your bestial nature for 20 or 30 years. So, and you might have just come into consciousness 5-10 years ago, if that. You might not even really even be in consciousness. You might have just started listening to conscious information 5 or 6 years ago, but you might not have even applied this stuff yet. So anytime somebody comes with something that's of a lower or base order nature, you're immediately going to say, see, I knew it. I knew it. Especially if that person looks like people who are part of that same conscious or higher awareness community. You see, that's how you get caught out there. I always tell you, your ego finds a way to hide itself within your consciousness. So you start to evolve and you start to grow, but then there's still that beast that's alive inside of you. Somebody speaks to the beast just takes over. So somebody will jump up in the middle of the thing and say, you ain't got to listen to nobody. Listen to yourself. All the answers are within. Man, that's some Western nonsense. I'm not even gonna call it Western feminism. That's just from Western nonsense, because you got guys who say stupid stuff like that too. Now, all this time, you've been learning how to get out of that. It only takes one thing to bring you back into it. One thing. You see how dangerous it is? That's why the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said that your environment will always outrule your nature. Your environment is stronger than your nature. Because your nature is struggling, man. It's like a little boat just trying to, and it's being tossed about by the way. It's struggling to try to bring your greatest self out, but it's surrounded by murkiness. Surrounded. See, that's when we get into the idea of the compound. We get in the idea of building protective walls around us so that the bestial quality of your environment doesn't close in on you. You see? We're surrounded by stupidness. Basically, we're surrounded by it. There's only a little bit of righteousness. Right now, even the way you're listening to me, right? 70% of it is wrong. Where y'all at? I don't know. What am I doing right now? You don't know. Where am I at right now? You don't know. How am I treating the elders around me right now? You don't know. How well adjusted or ill adjusted are my children and my family? You don't know. We could just go through it, right? What are you using this information for? I don't know. Who's listening right now? Who may be, do we have some neo-Nazis listening right now? I don't know. All of this is wrong. We're supposed to be together physically and spiritually and emotionally and mentally. We're supposed to be together. You see? So you see how even when righteousness presents itself, and what I'm calling righteousness is the teachings that you're getting right now, that there's still so much wrong present when we're in this environment. And sometimes we forget that. So we're learning through YouTube. That ain't even our platform. Right? And then there's an anonymity to it. Here we go. Who installed me as a chief? Any of you know? Most of you don't. So how do you know I'm actually a chief? Most of you don't know. How many of you care? Most of you don't care. For you, it's just a name. My name is Yuya. For most of you, you don't even know why I am a chief, or who installed me, or what day it happened on, or what village was there, or if any other villages came out to watch my installment. Both of them. You don't know. How many of you even know what an installment is? You see? So this is what I'm saying. Like, even when the teaching is flowing and the information is there, there's still so much wrong a lot of times. And it's the same way with our own personal nature. Even when we come into consciousness, we come into higher awareness and elevation. A lot of times, and by the way, seeking wisdom, I'm not even reading your comments at this point. I notice you keep putting comments. I see your blue thing popping up, but I ain't paying no attention to you. But anyway, so this is your time to learn. The emperor is speaking. Learn. Trying to cop a plea now and telling me who you are and what you're about, that's a waste of time. You already showed your ass. I already know what you're about. All right? There's nothing you can teach me. Nothing. Not one thing. Nothing. Maybe you know how to fry chicken a certain way. I don't know. That's it. So this is your time to learn. Yeah, I know. Thumbs down. I know they're coming. I don't care. So what I'm saying is see, when you establish a kingdom in your structure, see, I'm speaking inside of my kingdom. You notice whenever I start these shows, what do I welcome you to? ANU Nation, enlightenment and transformation. I don't welcome you to YouTube. That's not my kingdom. I don't welcome you to Blog Talk Radio. That's not my kingdom. I don't welcome you to Welcome to America. That's not my kingdom. I welcome you to what I've built, ANU Nation. Then I tell you what I am within our nation. Head instructor, Sedula House Spiritual Institute, Chief Jegna of ANU Nation and ANU Life Global Ministries. You see, I let you know what you're in. When it starts, the beginning, you hear one of my women say, you are now in the realm of enlightenment and transformation. That's my mate who says that. So she welcomes you in this. Every chief speaks. And then I say, welcome to Chief Speak. So you're in my environment. Inside of this environment, I am the emperor. Inside of your environment, hopefully your mate is the emperor or whatever. So what I'm saying is that a lot of times we have to be able to identify when we're doing something that's conscious and it's righteous and this and that, and there may be some elements still there's some speckles and some spots on Obatala's robe. There might be some dirt in the bottom of the palm oil that can make us sick. You see, we have not arrived. This is not the way you're supposed to be taught. But we're using what we have, what's in front of us, which is good. And we're going to use by any and all means necessary. We're going to utilize what's in front of us. But at the same time, let's not get it twisted and think that this is. So I'm not going to sit here and debate with somebody on no damn YouTube chat. Somebody ain't even got their freaking picture on the damn chat. No, you crazy? This ain't real to me. You know, I'm shooting shotgun shells at this point. And you know, the shotgun the grains are gonna scatter all over the place. If it hits somebody, cool. If not, whatever. That's how it is. That's how it is on the internet. But in my waking life, when I'm out in the streets and I'm talking to young people, I'm building. Nah, I'm targeting. I'm snatching young people up. Come on, let's go. Come on, yo, let's go get something to eat, man. Let me build with you. By all means necessary. So the internet, phone calls, online classes, in-person workshops, seminars, whatever. The line at the supermarket, the line on the bank, by all means necessary, we're going to spread this spiritualism and get this culture back. But trust me, I recognize when something ain't what it's supposed to be, because I'm sitting on my throne inside of my empire. So if somebody brings something inside of my empire that makes no sense, I'm clear on, that's not what we do here. So when I hear people say things like that, oh, well, I'm listening to myself. Well, you ain't part of this anyway, man. So you don't matter. You one of the fools. All right. And I use that word fool, not like the tarot fool, but like the biblical fool. If you look at the Bible, when it says fool, it says that's one of the sins that's unforgivable, to call your brother a fool. Fool translates into vain fellow. When you do the translations, vain fellow. So what that means is that to look at your brother, to look at your sister and say that what they're doing in the service of the kingdom is of no use, is like an unforgivable sin. It's just acts of vanity, you see. But I know when I see acts of vanity. I know when I'm hearing and seeing things that make no sense. People just doing it. They're just saying, just talking just to be talking, just to hear themselves talk. It ain't going anywhere. You know, I know the difference. So this is what I'm saying. When you learn to sit on your throne, you establish your throne and you sit on it. And sisters, you can't establish a throne by yourself. All right. So let me, before you start going there, I'm on my throne. Where's your man? I ain't got no man. Then you ain't got no throne. All right. You ain't got no throne. And I know, again, we take this sick system, we try to make it ours. We try to make it work. So we'll say things like, well, what if you ain't got no man? Well, that's not normal. That's not normal. Something's wrong there. So let's not try to take the abnormalities and make them normal. That's not natural. Let's say that. No, it is normal, but it's not natural. So let's not try to convert the abnormalities into something natural. See, that's what we do in a sick society. We take all the mutations and the abnormalities and we try to justify them. Oh, whatever you feel like you can do. You want to put on a dress and you do that. Go ahead, do it, boy. It's natural to want to be yourself. It's natural to want to be free. No, some things go against nature. And just because we make them the norm doesn't mean that they're natural or they're healthy for us. It's not natural for us to be alone. If that was the case, we wouldn't have come here. You see, that's not natural. But that's become the norm because we don't know how to get along with each other, because we lack decorum and respect. So we go through life being offensive and getting offended to the point that now I hate people. I hate being around people. You see, and no one says, well, you know what? Maybe I need to fix this thing inside of me first that's causing so much offense, that's causing me to attract offensive people into my life. We never say that. We just say, you know what? I just want to go on an island by myself and just live alone. I just want to get a cabin in the woods and just, oh my God, just get away from everybody. Well, you can't do that. It's never going to happen. And at some point, you got to go into town and get supplies. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have to learn to deal with yourself, man. Fix yourself. So that's what I'm saying, man. You know, again, as you do good, there's always going to be that element present, very similar to the 9 position Obi, position. Or even if you look at 5 position, look at Etwa, that position, where you have those light segments, but then there's still that dark segment. There's still that inkling of, I don't know. I don't know. You see, that darkness is always going to be present, and you got to just know how to deal with it when it's there. So even like when you speaking on the internet or you're sharing information, there's always, like Brother Byron had mentioned, it was very funny, but he noticed that the show had just started. We were like 4 minutes in. I didn't even say anything yet because I played some intro music, and when there's some technical difficulties, so I didn't say anything. Thumbs down. And all I could do was laugh because I said, good, I'm glad somebody finally saw it. People always going to put that. Who cares, man? Again, like I said, you don't know the mental state of the people you're speaking to. This is online. Half these people are crazy. No, half of them are insane. Let me use the right words, because half of us are crazy. But half of them are insane. At least the crazy ones, we woke up to our insanity. But many of us are still crazy. That's that bestial element that we're still trying to work out. We haven't become completely sane yet, but at least crazy people know that there's a problem. And they may take medication or go to therapy or get into ANU spiritual training to try to become more sane. You dig? But the bottom line is that insanity is always going to be around. So that's the people, when you correct them and you're teaching, they still come with something crazy to say. That's an insane person. I'm gonna listen to my Ori. I ain't got to listen to you. Well, nobody said you had to listen to me. But you do sound stupid right now. You do know that, don't you? Nobody said I never told anyone you have to listen to me. You see? But if you're in my environment, I'm not going to let you speak to me in a condescending way or disrespect me, which was the issue with that person. And that person does that to everybody. That's why that person's always alone. And she hasn't picked up on that yet. The problem is not with all of us. You're just obnoxious and nasty. That's the problem. And that's a symptom of a deeper problem that exists inside of you. You see? So that's what I'm saying, man. It's important. Now, Seeking Wisdom says, crazy recognize crazy. There's a cool feature in this chat where you can put people on timeout. Watch this. Boom. Timeout. Okay, there you go. She's been muted out. You can come back later. You can come back in 5 minutes when you learn how to act right. All right. I just put Seeking Wisdom in timeout. Sisters, you got to know when to close your mouth. Sometimes you just like to say things and you're disrupting the flow. People are learning. We got a bunch of people online right now. I see the numbers. Got a bunch of people listening. You still just rattling off. So she can still. I know you can still hear the show, but I put your comments on timeout. This ain't a game. It's probably a game for you. You just a bored housewife sitting at home all day. Ain't got nothing to do. So let me go ahead and stir up some trouble. Some people listening to this show were trying to kill themselves a year ago. Right? So it's not a game. You dig? So yeah, we're gonna test out that timeout feature on you, see how that works. You gotta know when to shut up sometimes, man. That's the bottom line. You gotta know when to close your mouth, man. When what you're saying it's of no value and it's distracting, and maybe again that's your purpose. That's what you're here to do. And maybe what we're supposed to do is to learn how to deal with distractions. Maybe that's a part of our obstacle course. So all we could say is thank the ancestors for all of you. Those of you who come in to be distractions, and some of you who come in to be helpers and motivators and inspirers of the movement and what we're doing. Because either way, we got to learn how to deal with the inspirers and we got to learn how to deal with the detractors. It's like when you go to get a reading, you may have to do an ebo, but the Babylon says the reading, everything was good. Why you got to do the ebo? To keep things good. Or if everything was bad, well, to turn bad from good. So either way, it's a sacrifice. So learning how to deal with somebody who's a distraction is going to require a sacrifice, and learning how to deal with someone who is bringing good things into our circumference is a sacrifice. No matter what, it's going to be a sacrifice. You dig? So that's what I'm saying, man. As you would do good, evil is always present. And I'm not calling the sister evil. I don't think she's evil, but she's giving us a beautiful gift, and I think the gift is to learn how to distinguish between what's real and what's fake. You see, that's important. We got to be able to distinguish between if somebody's saying something that makes sense and somebody is saying something just because they want a grandstand. I have people sometimes call into the show and do that. Just start talking. Say, anybody got any questions? Yeah, I got a question. And they just make this long, crazy long statement. You just want a grandstand, man. Go write a book. Go do it. Go do a workshop at a school assembly. Don't come over here grandstanding. We don't need it. Nobody asked for it. You know what I mean? Nobody dialed into the show or whatever because they want to hear you. Sit your butt back and listen and learn something. I'm not talking foolishness, but you so busy trying to be right and trying to talk that you're missing what's being said, and you're distracting people from what could be a great build session. Sometimes when you allow those detours and those distractors to stay into an environment, you begin to behave differently. You don't feel so comfortable about revealing how you're feeling or whatever, because you're like, this environment isn't clean, so I don't want to open up my purity because it's going to get dirtied by this environment. You see, somebody's acting silly, somebody's acting foolish. I don't want to talk too much. I'm just going to sit and listen. So it's the same thing within your own system, man. Imagine how much beast mode you still got inside of you that you refuse to clean out, which causes your higher self and the spiritual mind you to say, like sometimes you meet people, I know people like this. You try to talk to them and teach them about things, and they never listen. Or while you're talking, they're over there biting their fingernails or staring over your shoulder or staring off into the distance. So what do? You just stop talking. Why? Because you ain't listening anyway, man. Why am I wasting my breath? You got too much other stuff going on in your psyche. You're not paying attention. So I'm just going to stop talking. Now, that's on a physical level. But remember, whatever happens on a physical level happens on a spiritual level. So what happens when you have that same level of internal distraction? What does the spiritual ecosystem then do at that point? And then you say, my spirits don't talk to me. I go to sleep at night, but I don't dream. I never have dreams. No, the problem is not with the spiritual ecosystem. The problem is not with your capacity of faculties for dreaming. That's not the issue. That's not the issue at all. The problem is with your ability to remove some of those other elements surrounding you and the other elements that you've built your house on that are detrimental to the good energy in your life. That's why you'll get a whole bunch of teaching and then just say something stupid. because those elements are still present, and you want to keep putting your stupid things on the table for someone else to dissect and cut away at. See, a lot of times that's why a lot of your relationships fall apart, because you don't do that internal work. You get into a relationship and you expect your mate to be your therapist. So you throw all your garbage on the table and you say, you knew I had baggage. I got baggage. You knew that. Whose fault is that, man? Did you start going through some of that baggage and determining what you needed from what you didn't need it? Or you figure you're just going to throw it all on the table at me, and somehow I have a degree in psychiatry, somehow. Because we're now together, all of a sudden now I'm a psychologist. I just got a degree out of nowhere. It just comes along with being with you. And now suddenly I'm supposed to have the ability to break down all of this baggage in your world that you really need to speak to a professional about. And if I can't break it all down or can't create proper ordering and adjusting for you, then you complain. You see? So that's a part of that insanity. So no matter how much good stuff you bring into the table or you bring into a cipher, someone coming who has not worked on themselves is going to dump all of their baggage and their toxic and their venom right into the middle of the cipher for everyone to sit there and dissect. And then when you start dissecting it, or you point out, why would you dump that in the middle of the cipher? They'll say something like, oh, well, you engaged me. That doesn't answer why you dumped it in the middle of the cipher, though. You wanted somebody to work that out for you, but you weren't humble enough to say, I got something that I'm dealing with that I don't understand. Can someone please help me with it? How often do we hear that? Can you help me to understand this? I know you know a lot about this. Can you help me to understand that I'm having a problem? How many times people come, or do they just come to you arguing to get your genius out of you? You got to be able to peep game, man. Peep game. All right, we're going to head out. I don't even know if I want to scan the chat room. And usually I scan it for questions right before I leave, but I think I gave y'all enough extra. I gave y'all 52 minutes of extra game, of extra gems, all thanks to Seeking Wisdom. So we want to say thank you to that sister for acting up, because it gave us an opportunity to look at her acting up and address it. And, I'm sure there's somebody that you all have in your lives who are very similar, who do some of those same type of things or make some of those same type of statements. And I know a lot of times, especially when we're maybe a little new to consciousness, we get choked up quick. I've seen that a lot. We get choked up and frustrated. Somebody says something, and it could be your mother, somebody who's usually close to you, and you usually don't know how to respond to them. Or maybe what you're learning is new to you, but you just kind of, it's right, but you just haven't been able to articulate it yet. So you get choked up. And that's why a lot of times when people do stuff like that in the room, or they call on the phone, and you'll hear me say, listen, I'm not even saying this for you at this point. I'm saying this for the people listening. Sometimes y'all don't know how to handle and deal with those type of situations. I'm not gonna say those type of people, but those type of situations, you don't have the answers for it. And I tell you, a lot of times, like I said, just like if you go in the courtroom, stay as king. Ask questions. Somebody says something crazy, get them to define what they're saying. Somebody disagrees with you, real easy one. What do you mean by that? And you keep asking, what do you mean by that, until they finally say something that makes sense. I guarantee you're going to say, what do you mean by that, like 20 times until they give up. Because when someone is doing something like that, they never want you to really know what they mean. They don't want you to know that. So they're going to say everything else but that. But you got to be able to use that first eye vision to be able to see through what they're saying and to actually see what they mean. Even though they're going to tell you, well, maybe I'm not good at expressing it, but It's my intentions. That's what's important. Learn all the little buzzwords, all of the little defensive buzzwords that people use to get out of being accountable for the crap that they're saying. You got to learn that stuff, man. That's a part of learning war tactics. It's like going to war, which we are at war, and learning the typical plays and movements of your enemy. It's the same thing. So when you're faced with someone like that, or maybe it might be a Negro or something, you know, and I'm not speaking about this sister seeking wisdom at this point. I'm just saying, you know, in general, you have to learn how to see how people usually come at you. Just like when you get pulled over by a cop, they pretty much all say the same thing. So you got to learn what they're saying and how you want to respond. You know, so just like the same thing when you got somebody who's just talking, creating disruption. And then what they do is they'll usually mix compliments in between the disruption. You see, so they'll say something like sometimes people who talk to me, they'll say, "Oh, Chief, you know, I love what you're doing. I just want to say, brother, thank you so much. You know, da 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 da. You really are a gift to da 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 da." And they'll say, "But you know, one thing I notice a lot of times, you know, you go off on people. Maybe you need to learn to work on your ego." That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And you say, "What? Wait, huh?" You know. So that's when people come with them compliments, man. I get leery. And here we go. And I know what kind of people usually come with the compliments. I'm gonna keep it real. I'm not gonna say it because I don't want to start that back up again. But I know it's only certain people who do that. You know, or they'll call in the show and they say, you know, they'll take one word from the show. Let's say we're doing a show on family units that are separated that love each other long distance. Then a person will call in and say, "Yeah, you know, this is real good that y'all having a conversation surrounding family because, you know, it's an important thing in our community to have family. And, you know, I know that's what y'all been talking about, but I would just like to add something to the idea of family, you know, and we're not even talking about that. You see, but they're grandstanding. So they're going to take one word from what you're saying, and now they're going to platform their grandstand because they're not even involved in the cipher. If you were involved in the cipher, you would look at the title, understand what we're talking about, and listen first. You see? So that's what I'm saying. You got to learn how to peep out what's going on. Seeking Wisdom says, "Give thanks." I know, sugar. You get it together. You're going to get it together now. Don't worry about it. Like I always say, I'm going to fix you. You're going to get fixed. And she may choose to say, "I'm out of here. Forget you." All right, whatever. It's all right. The fountain is still going to keep flowing whether you drink from it or not. You know, it's going to flow despite. But yeah, man, you know, so you got to learn sometimes how to navigate through some of these things. And sometimes that's what it's about, learning about the terrain that's in front of you. And that's going to require you to learn about the personalities that's in front of you, the accomplish, you know, like you want to do certain things in terms of your consciousness, you know, think ahead. Man, I want to wear my hair like this or talk like this or do like that. What are some of the things that are going to come down on the road? Let me start planning and mapping for that now. So like, I already know how to deal with people who are disruptive or people who come in and try to, you know, say something and then backpedal, who don't know how to say, "I'm sorry, I should have done that." I already, I don't already map that out already. You know, that's what I was saying to the brother the other day in the show. And he was like, "Yeah, my problem is my temper." And I said, "You got to be able to project beyond the moment. Know that those moments are going to come, but learn to project beyond them so you can stay in control of yourself throughout the moment." So what happens right now if somebody gets in the chat room a troll and starts going on? I'm not talking about Seeking Wisdom, I'm saying in general. I'm done on her. I put her in timeout, gave her a moment to think about what she needed to think about, and now she's back. And I'll do that to any of y'all, male or female alike. I'll do that to all of y'all. All right, you're gonna be sitting there just rattling off, you know, thinking that you dropping stuff. You're not dropping anything. Nobody's getting with you. So just be quiet, sit in your damn chair and listen. All right. But you got to learn how to deal with things ahead of time, man. What happens when, you know, you go to that first family reunion and you know, you and your family don't eat the same anymore. Already have your statements prepared. Just like you may go with your food prepared, or you may say, yeah, we made some portobello mushroom, we're gonna make some portobello burgers, and yeah, we can put them on the grill. We just, we might use our own tin foil because you've been frying up pork sausage all day, so, or whatever it is, but you already kind of come prepared for certain things, which allows you to maintain your momentum. That's why I say this never a derailment. Y'all think it's a derailment, but it's not. I'm ready for these moments because I know in these moments I get to give you an extra jewel, She's still talking. Oh, she's still going. She said, give thanks. Not all. These are 3 different comments. First comment, give thanks. Second comment, not all. Got tough skin. Went through the 13. Oh, and then third comment, 13 Zodiac. Not trolling. Read 14 Keys last night. If you read 14 Keys last night, you wouldn't be talking such foolishness this morning. Go read it again. She's still going, boy. That woman got a lot on her mind, but you need to run for political office. That's what you need to do, Seeking Wisdom. She's into her talking now. She's like, y'all gonna listen to me. Put on 5-minute timeout. She came back even stronger. Lola says, and I thought I talked too much. Lola, you do talk too much. So yeah. That's your sister. Yeah, you do talk too much, Lola. That doesn't take away from anything, because Lola can well. Man, Lola can well, man. She love her talking, boy. That's a talkingest woman right there, but yeah, man, it's all love. Like I said, everybody's here to learn. That's the key. Everybody's here to learn. But yeah, man, just ride. Like I said, go for the ride. It's a beautiful journey if you just learn to go for the ride. We 3 hours in. I only want to do this show today for 30 minutes. Even sometimes I got to go for the ride. I was going to do it for 30 minutes because now on the Blog Talk, because I reduced it back to the free account, they give you 30 minutes for free. So I was like, I was thinking about it. I said, maybe I should still keep using Blog Talk, and that will force me to keep the shows down to 30 minutes. So I was thinking about doing it now. Love you, Chief. Still going. Take care. I will submit now. Ooh, you will submit? Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Seeking Wisdom. I've been talking for the last 3 hours because I really needed somebody to submit in order to validate that I am a man. Thank you so much, Seeking Wisdom. Oh, my goodness. I feel like I'm just going to go outside right now and just kick my heels up in the air like a leprechaun because you said that you will submit now. I got an unknown avatar with just an S. I got a blue circle with a white S written in the middle of it to finally submit to me. Oh, man, I am a Babalao. I am. Because you know what? I was questioning myself for the past 27 years as to if I was what I was doing was actually finally getting through, if anybody ever really respected me. So, but the fact that the blue circle with an S in the middle just said that she's going to submit. Oh, man. I feel like you know what? I'm going to make some babies tonight. I feel like now that you submitted, any baby that I make tonight is actually this will be my true seed. Now I realize, since you put that comment in there, every baby that I've made before today has been illegitimate. They are not the true heirs to the Anu dynasty. Tonight, I have now, or today, let me see what time. I need to mark this down. 10:04. This is my real installment. Forget about Nigeria. Forget about Ghana. Forget about the legacy of the Agun. I have been consecrated, sanctified, saved, and Holy Ghost filled by Seeking Wisdom. I'm going to make me some babies tonight. And you know what? I'm gonna show you how powerful her consecration is. I'm gonna make some babies with some random women tonight. And I bet you they still gonna come out powerful because Seeking Wisdom has said that she is gonna submit now. Thank you so much, sister. Thank you so much. Oh man, this is you know what? Honestly, I think this is one of the best days I have ever had. This day is starting out beautiful. Oh my goodness. You gotta have fun with it. It's not exhausting, Sequoia. You gotta learn to have fun with it. I'm just having fun with it. Because let me tell you something. She knows I'm messing with her, but she also knows she's crazy. I ain't the first person to tell her that. She knows she's crazy. So if I sat here and started breaking things down seriously, is she gonna listen? No, because what was I doing 2 hours before she started talking nonsense? Breaking things down seriously. So we ain't gonna do that no more. She's a trickster. Okay, let's do the trick thing. But yeah, thank you for anointing me. You've anointed me and appointed me. Seeking Wisdom. The blue, you know what? I'm gonna get that tattooed on me. A blue S with a white circle in the middle. Yeah, I'm gonna get that tattooed on my neck with a pair of lips. Because I've been kissed by God. Yeah. Anyway. So maybe now you understand how serious I take online people. That's how serious I take them. Okay. Whether it's compliments or whether it's critical feedback, whatever, that's how serious I take it. If we ain't sat down and ate a meal together, I don't know you. I told you that before. I don't know you. And you don't know me. So I'm gonna have some fun with it. Yeah, I'm on some new baby making ventures, Sister Michelle. Yep, because I have been consecrated by the loving hand. She said, and then she said after that, LOL, you are all man. How do you know I'm all man? How do you know that? How do you know I'm not transgendered? How do you know I'm a man? You ever see me make a baby? You hear me talk about my youth, but they could all be adopted. Or they could be my nieces and nephews. This is online, player. So what you need to do is soak up this ism that you're getting, man, and apply it. That's what you need to be doing, man. Instead of on here trying to cause trouble, be arguing and debating with people. Soak up the ism, man, and apply it to your waking life. That's what you got to do. You don't know what the heck you listening to, man. I might be a robot, man. This could be, I could be Colin Powell, and this could be my alter ego. You dig? You don't really know what you're speaking to, so close your eyes and listen and say, okay, what can I apply, what can I not, and maybe use those opportunities when they're doing retreats and stuff like that. Use those opportunities. Like Brother Zach did that, man. Brother Zach flew all the way from California, and he said, man, I had to look in your eyes and see if you was real. It was the first time me and Brother Zach met in person. I don't even know if we talked before that, if we did a reading or anything like that. I don't know if we even did a reading. We might not have. But he said, he flew out. He said, I need to meet you. Because he was really feeling what he was hearing, and it was changing him. And he had worked with the Babylon before. And the Babylon, I ain't gonna speak against him, but he had some issues there. And he was like, man, your stuff you really sound like you the real deal. You really do. And he felt that so much, he was like, man, heck, I'm gonna buy this ticket. And flew all the way out. And we got maybe in all one-on-one time, we got maybe an hour and a half in. And that's all he needed. Now you see all the things that Brother Zach does already now for ANU. So he recognized the value of that. Brother Charles, same thing. Charles used to come and anywhere I was speaking, Charles is there. Brother, y'all don't know about Brother Marlon. I don't think he's been on the show, but you probably don't remember. Marlon, the same thing. Anytime I'm anywhere in the New York area doing it, Marlon is right there in the audience. Him and his beautiful daughter and his woman. You know, Brother Charles, same thing. You know, anywhere I'm at. Brother Charles has driven 5 hours literally to come hear me do a workshop for 45 minutes. You know. So these are people who recognize and understand the value of getting in the same room with someone and breathing the same air they're breathing, and see how they interact with people, and see what type of chemistry and energy is coming off of them, you know, and making things real. These are people I've sat down and ate with, you know. So, you know, and I'm not discounting any of the rest of you, you know. But I'm just saying that don't think this is where it ends. Don't think this is where it might even begin. It may begin when you first link up with each other. It's not even about me. You know, like the Florida leg just did. Like, yeah, I know I'm talking about it again. I'm just proud of them, you know. But like how Michelle and the crew did, linked up. Now it's real. So now when they're on a phone call together and they say, and Michelle says, "Oh, brother Anwar, da da da," they done sat down, ate together, you know, saw each other's children, mate, kicked it at the beach, probably did some rituals while they were out there, you know. Now it's more real. Yeah, anything outside of that, man, yeah, I'm gonna play with. I'm gonna have jokes. I'm gonna laugh, and it ain't real. This is not the revolution. This isn't it. In case y'all were thinking that it didn't. This isn't it. Now you may all have your own personal revolutions, man, but this isn't the collective revolution. YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. The revolution is not gonna be televised, even though I know television is an old medium now, but the revolution is definitely not going to be supported on social media platforms. The revolution is not even going to be supported online. You know, the internet itself is an invention of the military. So yeah, get up in some woods, man. Get up in some spaces where your cell phone stop working. Light a fire. Husband is calling. His seeking wisdom still going. Husband is calling. Gotta go. You see, she put that in there on purpose to let us know. I got a man. Enjoyed the revelation. I hate you canceled the New Orleans retreat. Hopefully one day we'll be able to attend and meet you in person. Yeah, so we can have that toast. A toast to your trickery. All right, I'm out of here, man. You know, I had enough of no, I mean, I know y'all had enough of me. All right, but we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday, so you know it's a 1 p.m. thing. I may pull in the blog talk thing. I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes, believe it or not, sometimes I need a break from opening myself up to people. The chat room is easy because it's very passive, and with the chat room, I can ignore certain things. I can pretend like I don't see them. That's why I kind of like the chat room a little bit. It's not like a phone call, you know. But you know, just know, like I said, man, it's all love, man. You know what I'm saying? It's all love. Even me messing around with seeking wisdom, it's all love. You know, it's always going to be that. It's always going to be that. Just look at it like this, man. Lucifer was still flying up in heaven in the days of Job. There's always going to be that antagonist in the mix. Say, well, you know, where you coming from, man? Oh, to and fro, seeking whom I could devour. And God said, well, have you considered my faithful servant Job? You want to devour him? You know, so there's going to be those tests. So sometimes even the Most High will allow certain things to be in an environment in order to allow students to go through an obstacle course. You're always going to have that person, and sometimes it's you. You go to that family reunion, everybody's of one culture, and you go in there talking some other stuff, man. You know, no, I don't watch Scandal. I don't watch Empire. I'm not into that. Y'all need to, you know, you might be the antagonist. There's always going to be that thread or that thing that may, you know, jerk and pull you in certain directions and give you an opportunity to have dialogue that you wouldn't have before, man. You know, it doesn't mean that they're not a part of your family just because their vibration is off. You know, like, and what I mean by off is different than yours. That off note in the symphony, you know, or that one note that's off, that hit on the drum that's offbeat, you know. But there's a time for them. You got to look and see, even with their offness, if they swing to the down rhythm at times. You know, if they just stay off, then now you're dealing with something else. But do they come back home once in a while? Do they swing back to the downbeat? You can be as off-centered as you want, but when it comes time to put this work in and do these rituals, do you know how to form like Voltron? Or do you still sitting there being disruptive? Okay, well, now it's different. Like I said, we online. This ain't real, man. We having fun. We're growing through fun. You know, I had 3 people this strong. It was crazy. And my youth were like jumping up and down because, like, I told you, Baba. 3 separate people told me I should be a stand-up comedian at 3 different locations. You know, I was at one place in Strong, and that was kind of funny, but we were out eating. It was like an outside eatery. And there were people inside. And I don't know. I guess I just felt like making fun of the people who were inside eating because they, you know, they couldn't hear me. So I started just with my youth. We were at a table, and, you know, people started ear hustling, and then the whole outside was laughing and pointing at the people inside. And I was just going off. I think I was in rare form. It was kind of late too, so I think I was a little loopy. So, you know, my voice was loud. I was just going off. And people were like, yo, do you have a YouTube channel? You got to have a YouTube channel. Come on. You're a comedian, you know, and just having fun with it, man. So same thing I do here. Just, you know, sometimes you got to learn there's different ways to grow and learn. You know, you can learn through the stern stoic way. We could do speeches and lectures all day, or we can learn to joke and play with each other in a sense, as long as it's still respectful. You know, and there's a fine line, because sometimes people get it twisted and think that, you know, I'm a plaything and then I got to check you. But, you know, when somebody's coming in and being disruptive and causing trouble, I'm not always going to just turn into a pit bull. That's a waste of my energy. I may use it as a way to energize myself. So I'm going to use your folly and turn that into my food. All right, we out. I'll see you all tomorrow at 1 p.m. Peace.